Chapter 338. The next morning, Amigacure had a rare cloudless sky. Dustless's house was a different scene. "Is this really okay?" On the messy bed, Yuluo was speechless and smiled bitterly. Her face was red, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry looking at Dustless, who tied her up. She couldn't wait to slap him. Last night, Wu Qin had tormented her the entire night. Until now, Yuluo felt weak all over. Her lower body was so numb that she couldn't feel anything. Yuluo could clearly see that Yuluo's big hands were twisting left and right, and from time to time, Dustless's mouth would let out two pleasant songs. It's not difficult to see that he was very comfortable at the moment. La la la, the soft touch from his hands made Wu Qin restless. His eyes blurred involuntarily, and he hummed a strange and harsh tune. At this moment, he suddenly felt that lying in the arms full of body fragrance was the most comfortable thing. The Shinobi World War is about to begin. "You're so sloppy now." The corner of his mouth twitched fiercely, and Yuluo couldn't help but be speechless. The 5 major countries were watching the world covetously. As long as they find the shelter of the Akatsuki, they will give a thunderous blow. But now, Dustless still has the time to enjoy the love between a man and a woman. "Pa!" With a crisp sound, Yuluo directly pushed away Dustless's big hands and said, "The ninjas of the 5 major countries were originally a pack of wolves and tigers, and now Uchiha Obito and Black Zetsu are colluding together. But you have been abandoned by the whole world, Dustless." Yuluo reminded in a serious tone. The current situation can be described as terrible. Looking at the whole world, whether it is Obito or the ninja allied forces, they are the enemies that Dustless must get rid of. Hee. Hearing this, Wu Qin just smiled wretchedly. When he was about to reach his hand into that wonderful body again, Yuluo mercilessly slapped away his mischievous big hand. "You don't know how to have fun." Grumpily glaring at Yuluo, Wu Qin sneered, "Against the whole world? You really think too highly of those people. Besides, I'm not alone. At the very least, I have all of you on my side." Dustless said seriously. Although there were only a few people around him, they were all sincere to him. Hanrin, Xian, Hinata, and Yurikuro were all sincere to him. In addition, Dustless also has the corpses of the previous Hokage, as well as the hidden chess piece Mei. The power gathered in the dark can definitely change the outcome of the war. The so-called ninja allied forces are nothing more than shrimp soldiers and crab generals. There are very few of them that can be of great use. If the 5 Kage die, their hearts will also collapse. The only one worthy of attention is Uchiha Madara. Talking about the ninja coalition, Dustless shook his head. These people don't need to be dealt with by him. They can be dealt with by Obito's White Zetsu army. The only people who can attract his attention are Uchiha Madara and Kagaya. As for the person who Kagaya was afraid of, it shouldn't be so coincidental. Frowning deeply, Dustless's eyes flashed with a hint of uneasiness. The enemy that Otsutsuki Kagaya was afraid of, his strength can be imagined. But later, after Otsutsuki Kagaya was sealed, her enemy also disappeared as if he had never appeared and disappeared between heaven and earth forever. Especially according to Dustless's memory of Morio in the past, whether it is Kagaya or her enemy, it seems that they don't belong to the world in front of them. Like Dustless, Kagaya and her enemy are also invaders. Maybe it is not impossible for them to return to their original world. Is there really such a terrible existence, Dustless? Yuluo's tone was low, and her beautiful eyes were filled with anxiety and worry. Kagaya was the ancestor of Chakra, the god of creation through and through. It was not difficult to imagine how terrifying the enemy she was facing would be. Let nature take its course, don't worry, there will always be someone stronger. There is only motivation when there is oppression. Dustless smiled in relief and took Yuluo's jade-like hands into his arms to play with. He said softly, "Even if they are the so-called gods, they are nothing more than that. They just gain their fame by deceiving the world. Before eating the fruit of the divine tree, Huiji is just an ordinary person." "You can say that." Glaring at Dustless, Yuluo took back her hand and said discontentedly, "It would be best if you can change your greedy appearance. Otherwise you will definitely not see the sun tomorrow." "It's because I'm afraid that I won't be able to see tomorrow's sun, so we have to speed up the things we like to do." "Continue." Wu Qin was thick-skinned, he squinted his eyes and examined Yuluo's beautiful body. Like a tiger in a pack of wolves, he directly rushed over. Unexpectedly, Yuluo was prepared in advance and easily avoided Dustless's attack. "Obito is destined to be buried with us. Uchiha Madara, Black Zetsu, and Obito are the ones who want to be eliminated the most. He is just blinded by hatred. After knowing that the cause and effect of everything is me, he will naturally jump to the previous camp." Pursing his lips, Dustless elegance was gradually worn out by Yuluo. He said seriously, therefore he is destined to be the first person to be eliminated. In the end he was originally a chess piece. At the beginning, Uchiha Madara and Dustless cooperated because they were afraid that Dustless would do it alone, so he arranged Obito as a chess piece to monitor Dustless while completing his own plan. Obito's existence itself was to monitor Dustless, and there was not much value in using him. That's right? Yuluo nodded. Obito actually didn't have much ability. Without the Jubi and Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan, his strength could only be regarded as ordinary. Even if he was now facing Dustless, there was still a gap between the strength of the two sides. Chapter 339. The ninja allied forces were quickly formed, and in a very short time, they were divided into several teams, and each team was led by a ninja from each village. Originally, Konoha's ninja should be led by Kakashi, but he was already killed by Dustless. Now, Konoha's ninja could only send Guy to lead the ninja. In less than a few hours after Guy took office, Tsunade, as the chief of staff of the ninja allied forces, gave him a dangerous and deadly task. To some extent it's a death sentence. In a heavy and depressing office. Creak. As the door was gently pushed open, a middle-aged man wearing a green coat with a watermelon hair came into sight. His eyes were shining like stars, giving people a feeling of vitality. But deep in the corner of his eyes, there was sadness. 5-sama. The loneliness and desolation were swept away. Mato Guy bowed to the 5 Kages. His voice was as loud and clear as a bell, sonorous and powerful. The 5 Kages are not ordinary people. Although Guy hid it perfectly, he couldn't hide it from the eyes of these old foxes. Uchiha Dustless is a scourge to the whole world. Inoki sighed, and his tone was filled with endless melancholy. During the Third World War, he realized that Dustless was going to be a rising superstar in the future, and he wanted to urge the Cloud to kill Dustless together, but he didn't expect to be rejected by the other party, and even the Third Reikage humiliated the Rock Village. It's all because of that stubborn guy. If he had listened to my advice at the beginning, the problem would have been eliminated, and there would be no need to do this. Speaking of the Reikage, Inoki couldn't help but complain. If he had agreed to his plan, Dustless and Konoha's ninja village would have been wiped off the map. Tsuchikage-sama, my father is dead, please don't kill him, and the murderer who plotted against my father is you, please respect yourself. Inoki's words immediately caused Yondaime Reikage to glare at him, and his messy golden hair fluttered in the wind. If it weren't for the occasion in front of him, he wouldn't mind teaching Inoki a lesson and let this arrogant old man know how to behave. You too, the enemy is hiding in the dark. If we fight first, the destruction of the world will be near. Instead of casualties, it's better to give the world to them directly. As the chief of staff of the allied forces, Tsunade reminded them, seeing this situation they were confused about the future. Although the 5 major countries temporarily put aside their personal grievances, some deep contradictions can't be forgotten. For example, the current situation, the enemy suddenly became allies. Not many people can adapt in a short time. Hearing this, Yondaime Reikage and Inoki were silent, knowing that this was not the time to bicker. There's not much time, I'll get straight to the point, Guy. Taking a deep breath, Tsunade's eyes fell on Guy and said solemnly, the current situation looks very bad. Although we have all the advantages, the enemy is more terrible than us. It's a shark hidden in the deep sea. No one knows when the Akatsuki will attack. The power of the 5 major countries is terrifying, enough to destroy any country in the shinobi world, but in the face of the mysterious Akatsuki, they really don't have confidence. Especially compared to the hidden Akatsuki, the 5 major countries are exposed targets. The enemy can launch a sneak attack at any time, catching them off guard. Any task given by Hokage-sama will be completed without hesitation. Guy naturally knew the seriousness of the problem, and said to Tsunade resolutely. Tsunade nodded with satisfaction, and pointed to the map formed by the sand table, marked with the geographical location and details of various countries. Some countries haven't joined the ninja coalition yet. The Akatsuki's traitors are likely to be hiding in these countries. Her eyes suddenly fell on the country marked by the blue flag. Tsunade pointed at it and said suspiciously, the countries that haven't joined the ninja coalition forces have sent spies to infiltrate them. Only the Rain Village, the last ninja village, hasn't moved. It's very likely that the Akatsuki's base is in this village. Hearing this, Guy's eyes flashed with anger, and he immediately guessed Tsunade's intention and said solemnly, Hokage-sama wants me to sneak into the Rain Village to investigate. This is not a problem. The hatred of Kakashi and Jiraiya-sama will be avenged by the blue beasts of Konoha. It seems that there are people in the world who are not afraid of death. daring to lurk in the rain village alone. When Mike Guy set off, the information had already been passed to the hands of Dustless. The source of the news was naturally Terumi Mei, who was in the Chow camp. A wise man submits to circumstances. Dustless didn't think that the traitor was shameful. Instead, he thought that Terumi Mei was saving the Mist Village. Let me deal with him. Hearing that the enemy was coming, Yu Luo frowned and recommended herself. Wu Qin shook his head. This Mado guy is naturally not an ordinary person. Maybe he will suffer a double loss. Mado Guy's fighting power is close to that of Madara. He can even defeat him in a short time. Even if it's just a flash in the pan, this berserk beast can't be underestimated. It's more reliable for me to do it myself. He's not an ordinary person and he can't be estimated by common sense. After a long silence, Dustless decided to destroy Konoha's blue beast by himself. Although the other party is just an ordinary person, if he is angered, he will erupt with strength beyond the six paths. Seeing Dustless's action, Yu Luo frowned and her eyes flashed with doubts, but she still closed her mouth. Chapter 340. Otsutsuki Higuro stared at Dustless. The other party is just a jonin, but Dustless wants to do it himself, whether it's reasonable or otherwise. You don't understand, that guy is the best object to test my strength. Dustless smiled mysteriously, and his heart that had been cold for many years was strangely surging. Most of his enemies over the years were small actors, and only the explosive Mado guy was the real protagonist. Dustless also wants to fight with the strong, instead of using the glinting fruits ability to exhaust the other party. Taking a step back, even if the elemental transformation is shameless, he has to wait until he can't beat the enemy to launch the glinting fruits ability. The best test object? Higuro was confused. Although he couldn't see what was special about Mado Guy, Dustless's face was full of fanaticism. If it was an ordinary thing, it wouldn't arouse his interest at all. The sky was drizzling, gloomy and depressing, and there seemed to be some fierce beast hidden in the depths of the clouds, stirring the wind and clouds unscrupulously. In the wind and rain, a quiet figure stood for a long time, wearing black clothes and a bamboo hat. The world in the rain was particularly lonely, isolated from the world. Looking up, within a few kilometers, there were no birds and beasts, and there was no human habitation, like a deserted island purgatory. According to the route sent by Terumi Mei, there is no doubt here. But after so long, did she come? The corner of Wu Chen's mouth stopped moving. Under the sage mode, Wu Chen suddenly perceived a nimble figure. The figure's movements were simple and skillful. Every move and jump seemed to be made by nature. Even Wu Chen could not compare with the figure who had used the body technique to the limit. Worthy of Konoha's gray wolf beast, Dustless couldn't help but nod in admiration, and his face was full of admiration. Looking at the whole world, only Mado Guy and his son can practice taijutsu to this level. It's a pity. The regret in his eyes flashed away and was replaced by indifference, and the vast chakra in his body began to surge, and because the golden chakra was too rich, Dustless's whole body was covered with a golden coat. In the wind and rain, it turned into a beautiful golden color. He's here. His pupils suddenly opened and shot out a cold light. He raised his head and saw a strong figure braving the wind and rain coming straight at him. Due to his terrifying speed, there were still some figures behind him that had yet to disperse. This guy. Fortunately, he doesn't know ninjutsu. Dustless's face sank. His calm heart rippled. If this kind of speed was combined with the ever-changing ninjutsu, it would be invincible. While Dustless was lost in his thoughts, Mike Guy had already appeared a dozen meters away. He stared coldly at Dustless, his killing intent soaring. Such heavy rain, Dustless's slightly raised smile froze. Only then did he realize that it was only drizzling. His eyes flashed with embarrassment, but he was also a person who had experienced many storms and waves, so he quickly calmed down. In short, I have been waiting for you for a long time. Why do you look like you can't wait to tear me to pieces? Dustless's counterattack was a strong chakra fluctuation and a burst of earth. It was not difficult to see that Mike Guy had opened the Hashiman Tanku. Seventh Gate of Wonder, open. The surface of his body was covered with blue steam, and the intense fluctuations that erupted from his body directly shattered the ground beneath his feet. Then he shot out like a cannonball. Clenching his hand into a fist and rolling up a violent tornado, Mike Guy rushed straight at Dustless. Bang! Boom boom boom. The surrounding ground collapsed once again, and the scattered shockwaves turned into a powerful shockwave, covering an area that was a complete mess. However, Wu Qin, who was attacked head-on, was calm and collected. There was no change in his mood at all. He raised his palm and easily caught the heavy fist. Why are you showing such a surprised expression? This should not be the limit of the Hashiman Tanku. Your strength is at most a stalemate with me, it is impossible to kill me. Looking at Mike Guy, who was in disbelief, Dustless said without any ripples. His eyes were as calm as stagnant water, and there was a faint anger. He suddenly found that he was underestimated. Seeing that his attack was easily blocked, Mike Guy's eyes flashed with a touch of hostility. What about this daytime tiger? As Mike Guy's voice fell, a giant white striped tiger fell from the sky, and its sawtooth was full of fangs and biting towards Dustless. Its majestic body was even comparable to the complete Kinsusanoo. After all, Mike Guy used this technique to instantly kill Uchiha Madara's mature Kinsusanoo. Its power was self-evident. I carefully explained to you that just opening the seventh gate can't hurt me. As a blue beast, you don't understand human language? It seems that I talk too much nonsense. Looking up and glancing at the white tiger, Dustless shrugged and sighed and lazily said, in that case I can only rely on brute force to open the eighth gate. A ripple appeared in his pitch-black pupils. Soon after they twisted rapidly. The dark blue left eye was directly exposed to the sky. This fat cat looks good, but it's useless. It's just a joke to me. With a contemptuous look, Dustless gently waved his hands forward, and a strong chakra wave directly formed and turned into a tornado. Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. A tornado hundreds of meters long rose from the ground, and the high-speed rotating waves swallowed the flowing air and strengthened itself. It was more ferocious and terrifying than the white striped tiger. Puchi. The white tiger screamed and its huge body burst. At the moment when the two collided, the stronger tornado directly killed it, twisting it into countless pieces and completely disappearing from the world. Chapter 341. This guy, Maitre Guy's face was gloomy. Day Tiger was the strongest move after activating the Gate of Wonder, and Dustless actually countered it so easily. Especially those mysterious dark blue eyes, it gave him an untouchable feeling. The difference between you and me in this state is too great. A gust of cold wind blew past, blowing Dustless's hair up high. Dustless said quietly, his calm demeanor made Maitre Guy's heart fall to the bottom. He couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. Just like what Dustless said, the difference between them was too great. They were not on the same level at all. If that's the case, then burn youth. The haze was swept away. Maitre Guy roared angrily, the chakra in his body began to go berserk, and a rapidly pressuring hurricane blew out from his body. The terrifying airwave could even blow away the mountains. Even someone as strong as Dustless felt a fatal pressure. Chakra is rushing towards the heart. Dustless under the reincarnation, I could clearly see the direction of the chakra in Maitre Guy's body. A small part of the chakra was rushing towards the heart quickly. This is... Squinting his eyes slightly, Dustless tensed up and secretly became vigilant. In the dark, he actually felt like he was being stared at by a prehistoric beast. Under Dustless's astonished gaze, the blue steam burning on Guy's body turned into dark red blood steam. Boom boom boom. Ka ka ka. Maitre Guy, or at this moment, 8-Gate Guy's body exploded with dark red steam that turned into a solid attack. His entire person was like a god of destruction that walked out from ancient times. The gas floating all over his body tore the air and directly evaporated it into nothingness. What was even more terrifying was that 8-Gate Guy's body had turned blood red at this moment. His hair was the same, and so were his eyebrows. Gulp. Even with Dustless's temperament facing 8-Gate Guy in this state, he also felt a sense of awe. In this state he had completely surpassed the level of a human. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Although he was sure that the final winner was himself, Dustless didn't dare to be careless. After all, this was the strongest Hashiman Tanku, a terrifying ninjutsu that once crushed Madara. It was worthy of Dustless's attention. Without thinking, Dustless directly floated into the sky, and gathered light in his palm. Have you opened the gate of death, of the 8 inner hidden gates? Just a candle in the wind. Yasukani no Magatama. Wu Chen's face turned cold. The light in his palm scattered in all directions. The dark night sky was instantly filled with light. Numerous light bullets poured down like a rainstorm. The boundless energy tide almost annihilated the triumphant 8 gates. Under the overflowing radiance, those below the 8 gates of triumph were not worth mentioning. Guys, guy said. Guy and guys. And guy guys. Guys. Of the guy gate. Essence bodies guy. However, Suddenly Ba Men Kai said passionately, and I'm definitely not as simple as withering away. After blooming my youth, I turned into nourishment to nourish the earth. Everything in the world will be devoured by me, Uchiha Dustless, so why are you still nourishing yourself? Before Ba Men Kai could finish, Dustless rudely interrupted his crazy speech. This kind of boring declaration was too laughable, and he was overestimating himself. The earth was so vast, and it was foolish to think that he could nourish it with the body of a human. Then before you devour this land, I'll bury you with my youth. Looking fearlessly at the light bullets, Ba Men Kai's skin turned dark. Instead of retreating, he charged forward and gathered all his strength at the tip of his feet. Like a cannonball, it shot straight towards the boundless light balls. From the looks of it, it seemed to have completely ignored the Yasakani no Magatama that filled the sky. What a reckless thing, so arrogant. I want to see how miserable it will be when you are beaten into a sieve. Dustless's face suddenly collapsed. He has always been the one who despises others, but now Ba Men Kai is treating the Yasakani no Magatama like air. How can he not be angry? Oh. Boom! Ba Men Kai, who rose from the ground, was burning with crimson steam. Any matter that came in contact with him was forcibly distorted, and every light bullet that came in contact with him would automatically detour and slip away from him. What kind of joke is this? This guy. Seeing this, Dustless's face changed dramatically, and for the first time in his life he was shocked. Looking at Ba Men Kai, who was burning with crimson steam, the corners of his mouth twitched fiercely, and a touch of disbelief flashed in his heart. He can distort time and space with speed alone. It's not that Ba Men Kai ignored the Yasakani no Magatama, but that the space around Ba Men Kai was completely distorted, and the trajectory of the Yasakani no Magatama was also forcibly changed, and it couldn't touch Ba Men Kai's body. This kind of shocking feeling is really exciting. Staring at Ba Men Kai, who was stepping on the air as if he was facing a formidable enemy, Wu Chen was not afraid. Instead he smiled. The sinister and evil smile at the corner of his mouth was particularly strange. His left eye began to ripple, and the mysterious reincarnation Sharingan was exposed, and the mysterious 9 tomo hung on it, and a faint ripple appeared. The focus of his sight was naturally on Ba Men Kai's body. Want to get close to me? It's not that easy. Looking at Ba Men Kai, who was whistling towards him calmly, Dustless disdainfully snorted. He would not wait for death with his bare hands, that was not his style. Clasping his hands together, a mysterious black sphere was formed, and slowly floated into the sky. You're just a mere beast. Go back to the cage and stay there obediently. Chibaku Tensei. Chapter 342. Chibaku Tensei was the strongest sealing technique of the Rinnegan. There was no doubt that it was powerful. Legend had it that the Sage of the Six Paths used this technique to create the moon. Since he could create something as big as the moon, sealing Hashiman Kai was naturally not a problem, at least Dustless thought so. Hurry up and get in. With a roar, the surface of the black sphere floating in the sky suddenly flashed with golden brilliance, ripples splashed in the void, and a strong and irresistible gravitational force surged out from the black sphere, covering a boundless area. Ka-ka-ka, the sound of the ground collapsing and cracking could be heard. Like shredded paper, the huge rocks began to float upwards, towards the center of the gravitational force, towards the area where the black sphere was. Hashiman Kai was no exception. He was swallowed by the gravitational force of the black sphere, and his whole body began to float up. How can my youth be lost to this kind of thing? Covered in red steam, Hashiman Kai was like a demon god. The black eyeballs in the frame were also replaced by chaotic white eyes, full of a strong destructive power. Burn my youth. Eoeo. Oh. The monstrous roar resounded through the sky, like a thunderbolt. Everything around was forbidden, and the dark red steam covering Hashiman Kai's body burned more vigorously. Even the roar of a mythological beast could be heard. Dustless was in a trance. Under Dustless's stunned gaze, Hashiman Kai directly ignored the black sphere above his head. The so-called Chibaku Tensei did not exist in front of him. Dustless's eyes twitched. Didn't you hear me tell you to get in? Clapping his hands together, Dustless's left eye was bloodshot. Chakra was like a vast and boundless ocean, and the gravitational force of the black sphere increased by dozens of times in an instant. The ground within a radius of dozens of kilometers all collapsed, and floated towards the sphere floating in the sky at an extremely fast speed. Caught off guard, he also directly swallowed it. After all, the gravitational force increased by dozens of times in an instant. He did not expect it, and his whole body was directly buried. Ka-ka-ka. The boundless amount of stones floated into the sky, and the surface area of the huge sphere continued to expand. These stones were precious nutrients that increased its volume. After a few breaths of time, this unprecedented calamity finally came to an end, and only then did the earth proudly linger on at death's door. A pitch-black shadow covered the horizon, and the sun couldn't be seen. Everything in the world was gloomy as if it was the end of the world. The light of dawn would never shine here. Looking up, he saw a giant sphere floating in the void. He had no idea how big it was, but the world in his eyes was filled with this meteorite, which explained everything. Even a god would not be able to escape from such a strong cage. The Chibaku Tensei that I cast is no ordinary Chibaku Tensei. Compared to the fallen Nagato, its power is more than several times stronger. The corner of Dustless's mouth raised slightly, showing a confident smile. Eye power and chakra content were absolutely everything, and naturally, it also determined the gap between him and Uzumaki Nagato. The cage that was tailor-made for you is completely over. Wu Chen's words came to an abrupt halt as a peerlessly tyrannical energy fluctuation came over. His smile also quietly froze and stiffened. In the void, the enormous meteorite that almost filled the sky emitted a buzzing sound of vibration. Looking up at the meteorite in the void, Dustless's eyes widened, and he choked unnaturally. What kind of power is needed to make it sway like this? Following Dustless's line of sight, he saw the meteorite floating in the void was strangely swaying from side to side. The huge and almost endless meteorite was more than 100 tons. Such a shocking thing was simply unheard of. Relying purely on brute force to make it sway like a fallen leaf, Dustless asked himself if he could do it. Sure enough, it's not a monster that can be dealt with by Chibaku Tensei. Dustless's face not only did not show any fear but instead showed a morbid excitement. His eyes were fiery as he looked at Chibaku Tensei, and his bright eyes seemed to be able to see Hashiman Kai inside the meteorite. Although he could directly use the elemental transformation to exhaust Hashiman Kai, that was in a helpless situation. Dustless did not think that he would be beaten by Hashiman Kai without any means to fight back. If I know the Hashiman Tanku, this is not realistic. A light flashed in his mind and Dustless's eyes lit up. The advantage of the Hashiman Tanku was obvious, and it could be called invincible. However, after just a few breaths of time, he decisively shook his head. The Hashiman Tanku's strict requirements on the body had reached an unprecedented level. Every time a gate was opened, the physical quality of the body would double, and the body's self-harm would also increase. Hashiman Kai was able to open the last gate of the Hashiman Tanku, the gate of death. This was also the reason why he persevered day after day, year after year. Dustless did not have the time to spend decades training his body. Boom, boom, boom. With a loud sound, the meteorite floating in the sky fiercely trembled, splashing up a lot of dust. Many large stones also fell down, and the pure force of the collision tore them apart. A dark hole suddenly appeared on the previously intact meteorite. Looking carefully, there was a faint crimson flame flickering in the hole. Although it was only a little light, it gave people a feeling of crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, and the meteorite was easily destroyed. As time passed, the crimson light became more and more obvious, and one could clearly see a figure covered in steam. It was Hashiman Kai who crushed Chibaku Tensei. This guy, Dustless's face was very ugly. Chibaku Tensei was so easily crushed by brute force, it was indeed beyond his expectations. Just as he was about to attack again, a crimson monster came biting at him. Chapter 343. The unknown red creature was ferocious. It spat out heat waves like a dragon's breath, and its huge body was surrounded by ripples. Its exposed fangs were gleaming with a cold light. If it moved its mouth slightly, even a mountain would crumble in an instant. This should be Day Tiger. After hesitating for a while, the confusion in his eyes turned into understanding. Dustless said with certainty. Although there was a difference in color and power, the appearance of this tiger did not change much. He could use Day Tiger after activating Gate of Wonder. Now that he had activated Gate of Death, there was no reason why he could not use it. But it doesn't look like a Day Tiger. In short, no matter what kind of monster you are, it's my turn to fight back. Dustless looked cautiously at the approaching crimson monster. His face was filled with hostility. The pupil power in his eye of reincarnation began to go berserk, and a special chakra emerged from his right eye. Dustless's emerald coat was wrapped around his body. His form had undergone a drastic change, and a few green prayer beads were floating behind him. With a gentle wave of his arm, the green prayer beads behind him floated in front of him. The mysterious sphere was pulsating with a mysterious luster. Dustless's mind moved slightly, and the sphere turned into a liquid state. The golden light gathered in his palm. Disappear along with your boring beastly dreams? Dustless lifted his eyelids and looked at the approaching crimson beast expressionlessly. The brilliance in his palm swept out, and in the blink of an eye, the golden light expanded infinitely and extended to a few thousand meters. It was like a golden wave sweeping out. Golden wheel reincarnation explosion. The destructive light connected the north and south, and the area covered was boundless. Everything along the way was sliced apart. Not to mention resisting, they did not even have the ability to retaliate. Pfft. The light passed through the crimson beast's body, and the smooth burnt wound was clearly visible. The mighty and huge body was instantly killed. That's all. The light beam in his hand dissipated. Wu Qin talked to himself casually and floated in the sky motionlessly. He was extremely frivolous and casual. Even Ba Men Kai was stunned for a while. For a moment, Ba Men Kai also fell silent. He lowered his head and stopped his fierce attacks. His eyes flashed with a strange light, as if he was thinking of a way to deal with Dustless. Is it really okay for you to waste your time like this? This is a technique that burns one's life. When this gorgeous outer layer is burned away, I'm afraid I won't even need to do anything. You'll die. Dustless could clearly see the situation inside Ba Men Kai's body. He could clearly see that the chakra on his meridians was slowly fading away, especially at his heart. The light was even dimmer, as if it could be extinguished at any time. Now that Ba Men Kai was burning his life force, wasting time would only accelerate the loss of his life force. Dustless could clearly see that some of the bones in his body had already begun to crack. If that's the case, after thinking hard, Ba Men Kai found that there was no way to deal with Dustless. In the face of absolute power, there was no conspiracy that could defeat Dustless. Instead of thinking hard, it was better to fight Dustless. This method was more effective and direct. Boom, boom, boom. Ba Men Kai stepped on the air and his speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Dustless out of thin air as if he used a space ninjutsu. He clenched his hand into a fist and punched towards Dustless's face. Evening Elephant. A white iron fist with silver light was punched out from Ba Men Kai's hand. It turned into a solid fist like an air cannon, and the target was naturally Dustless. Boom. Accompanied by a loud bang, Dustless's body flew out upside down, smashing the mountain in the distance into pieces, and a huge crater on the ground was clearly visible. After being punched so hard, the tailed beast would definitely die. This guy. What's the meaning of his action? Ba Men Kai narrowed his eyes and his brain was spinning rapidly. Dustless was immune to physical attacks, but now he chose to take his attack head-on. This action really puzzled him. Ah, what a ferocious fist. But it's really disappointing. To think that I thought you could make me go all out just once. Wu Qin stood up and slightly moved his numb arms. At the critical moment just now, he crossed his arms to block the bombardment of Ba Men Kai without any fear and avoided the vital parts of his body. Although Dustless was sent flying by Ba Men Kai's attack, he also tested Ba Men Kai's strength. If it was limited to this, he didn't mind giving up his advantage to fight Ba Men Kai head-on. Staring at Ba Men Kai with burning eyes, Dustless's eyes flashed with a threatening chill. That was the expression of a hunter when he saw a beast struggling for its life. This guy is really terrifying. To be able to take the attack of Sunset Elephant, and still be so lively, cough cough. While his heart was filled with thoughts, his lungs suddenly rolled, and red blood uncontrollably burst out of his mouth. Ba Men Kai's vision obviously dimmed a lot, and he was gasping for breath, giving people the feeling of the sunset. Suddenly, a cold wind blew, and Ba Men Kai's body seemed to be dancing with the wind, unable to get rid of it. Even if I die, I will take him with me. Ba Men Kai's confused eyes recovered, and the hesitation disappeared in an instant. The piercing pain spread throughout his body, but it also couldn't stop Ba Men Kai's lofty spirit. The blood vapor that had previously shown signs of being completely extinguished was actually burning vigorously once again. The density was even denser than before, almost solidifying. Could it be that he can still be strengthened? The corner of Dustless's mouth fiercely twitched, and he cursed in his heart. This Ba Men hidden gate was too strange, it could be strengthened without limit. But soon the disbelief disappeared. Dustless clearly noticed that Ba Men Kai's body was already scorched black, and the chakra in his heart was also gradually extinguishing. Chapter 344. Dustless in the Tensigan mode and the 9 Tomo Rinnegan mode. The situation inside Yakumen Kai's body couldn't be hidden. Everything was clearly exposed to his eyes. It's almost the end. Next is the craziest period of the beast's counterattack. No matter when, the beast's dying struggle is the most dangerous and fatal. In the face of the threat of death, they will erupt with far more terrifying combat power than usual. Especially Yakumen Kai, knowing that he has no hope of getting a new life, he will inevitably erupt with more ferocious combat power. This is a cruel fight with his life on the line. It's coming? Yakumen Kai's pupils suddenly shrank. He looked directly at the golden light in front of him with full concentration, and clenched his iron fists tightly. Courting death. Yakumen Kai sneered again and again. The fact that light can't be turned is now known to the whole world. So, Dustless's approach is indeed courting death, at least Yakumen Kai thought so. If Dustless doesn't use elemental attacks to ignore physical attacks, he has absolute confidence to suppress him. Evening Elephant. Yakumen Kai clenched his iron fists that were several times larger than Tongling's. Yakumen Kai didn't move, but when he moved, a solid air cannon blasted out from his black iron fists. It whizzed towards Dustless in a straight trajectory. Evening Elephant. Evening Elephant. In his mind, he seemed to recall Dustless's unscathed appearance after being hit by the Evening Elephant head-on. Yakumen Kai suppressed the stinging pain in his body, and still blasted out 2 fierce astral winds. The 8 inner hidden gates required one to burn one's own life. Every second was precious. A total of 3 air cannons were hurtling toward him. The power they contained was extremely terrifying, and the space they passed through began to twist and distort. The strongest taijutsu is really not for show. Among the opponents I have fought in the past, the title of the strongest does not belong to Uchiha Sasuke, nor does it belong to Uchiha Obito. I am willing to admit that you are the strongest. Dustless's momentum rose to the limit, and for the first time in his life, he burst out with all his strength, facing Yakumen Kai in his peak state. Ao. Hum hum hum. The boundless chakra was like a prehistoric monster that had awakened. The 8-gate Kai seemed to have heard the sigh of the vicissitudes of life from ancient times. The entire void started to hum as it was corroded and decayed. In the frame of the Rinnegan Sharingan, there are 9 black tomo patterns hanging on it, and along with the violent chakra fluctuations, they spread out like water ripples. Mahalaya. Bang! Above the void, an unstoppable repulsive force exploded, and the area of effect was unprecedentedly large. The 3 extraordinarily powerful squalls were directly swallowed up by the airwaves. I only destroyed 2 of them? Dustless frowned slightly. The previous 2 air cannons had already been swallowed up and had completely disappeared into the horizon. However, there were still some air cannons that had slipped through the net and were whistling towards Dustless. However, due to the previous airwave attack, the powerful air cannon had lost its luster and had obviously dimmed. It was also weakened by the sudden attack of a powerful move like Mahabharata. Stop here. With a chuckle, Dustless's body glowed with light, and when he got close to the air cannon, his body condensed into a solid form, and his leg flashed with a dazzling luster, and he kicked out mercilessly. Lightspeed kick. Boom. The boundless sky suddenly exploded. The 2 tyrannical forces were evenly matched and a strong impact broke out. The entire void trembled fiercely, and there were some faint traces of distortion. However, it was obvious that the golden luster was slightly better. The blazing ripples spread out and spread to every inch of the sky. The dazzling luster swallowed the white light and calmness was restored. It ended with Yakumen Kai's defeat. This guy actually blocked the continuous attacks of Evening Elephant. Do I really have to use that? Taking a deep breath, Yakumen Kai felt that his life was accelerating, and the hesitation in his eyes disappeared. His white eyes were full of awe-inspiring color, and his whole body was exuding the madness of a desperate fight. Idiot! Do you think you still have a chance? The time for you to dance is over. A ghostly voice suddenly sounded behind him, accompanied by a strong flash of light. Yakumen Kai suddenly froze, and when he was about to run away, it was already too late. The dazzling golden light had already covered him. Konoha's blue beast. Have you ever been hit by the speed of light? This kind of ecstasy is unforgettable, and now it's time to carefully savor this rare enjoyment. Lightspeed kick. Boom. In the face of the heaven-defying speed of light, no creature can escape. Yakumen Kai, who was locked by Dustless, was hit by the impact of the lightspeed kick, and he was kicked down from the sky by Dustless. Boom boom boom. Endless smoke and dust rose up from the devastated ground, and it exploded once again. In the deep pit, one could clearly see Ba Men Kai, whose body was almost completely charred. He had lost all of his qi and blood, and his breathing was negligible. What a perverted physique! With such a heavy degree of injury, his whole body is unrecognizable, but it seems that he can still struggle at death's door. Dustless's body in the sky slowly landed on the ground, and he wiped the sweat off his forehead. After the battle he was also exhausted, whether it was his body, mind, or body. Is this the end? I'll let you fend for yourself. Turning around resolutely, Hachiman Kai was already a candle in the wind. Even if he didn't do anything in the end he would die. The gate of death of the Hachiman Tanku had already burned his everything, and the current Kai was just an empty shell. Chapter 345. Spiritual willpower is a very mysterious thing. For example, Uzumaki Naruto always has a kind of magical power. In fact, it's not just him, many people in Konoha have this kind of power to break out of the cocoon and be reborn in despair. Right now, Yamaten Kai also has this kind of mysterious power. Maybe his body has completely disappeared. What supports him in this bitter battle is his soul. It's really boring, can't you just quietly wait for death to come? At this moment you want to drag me to hell with you. How come everyone has this kind of unrealistic idea, to drag me to hell? Go to hell. Looking indifferently at the void in front of him, Wu Qin suddenly said as if it was a fantasy. Boom boom boom. Ow ow ow. Not long after Dustless's voice fell, chakra fluctuations suddenly came from behind him, and a loud sound similar to the roar of a mythological beast could be heard. Looking back leisurely, what came into his eyes was a red mythological beast with a ferocious appearance. Although this blood-colored beast god formed by chakra was extremely strange, it had huge golden eyes, and it was covered with sharp and strong scales. It looked like a nondescript monster. Even so, Dustless decided to treat it as a mythological beast. The monster full of scales was extremely terrifying, and the oppressive aura it exuded was suffocating, and the space around it was faintly distorted. This is not a strength that any beast can have, only a mythological beast can have this kind of strength. At this moment, Konoha's blue mythological beast has stepped into the level of transcendence. The last song. Well, let me see what kind of taijutsu can defeat Uchiha Madara. Let me see what kind of shocking power it is. The shock in his eyes turned into fanaticism. Feeling the overbearing aura of the crimson beast, Dustless was also excited for a while. This ugly beast made him feel a little threatened. Humans are this kind of magical animals. When they are under the threat of death, they often break out more powerful strength, and everyone has this kind of potential in their body. In the red mythological beast formed by chakra, Yamaten Kai struggled to support his burnt body. He was exhausted, and he could barely feel his breathing. What supported him to stand up was completely his will. Seeing this scene, Wu Qin also couldn't help but be in awe. He admired this genius who trained hard to become a god. Faint ripples splashed in his indifferent heart, and he had a little more respect for him. Mato Kai is different from other ninjas. It can even be said that he was accompanied by endless ridicule in his childhood. After all, the future of a taijutsu-type ninja is self-evident. With his own hard training, Dustless to reach the level of a god today, he can't be compared to Kai. Whether you can hear my voice or not, there is something I have to tell you. Looking straight at the muddle-headed Yamaten Kai, Dustless said in a deep voice, your current state, compared to the Sage of Six Paths in the past, you have obtained the power to be on par with him, even if it is just a flash in the pan. If it wasn't because of our different standpoints, I don't mind becoming friends with you, which is the so-called fetters. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. Dustless was not lying. He had respect for a genius like Yamaten Kai who trained hard. Bring it on, I will use my peak strength to fight you. Raising his right hand, Dustless's palm suddenly drilled out a black liquid. It compressed into a shape, and in just a few breaths, it formed a black staff. The shape was the same as the staff of the Sage of Six Paths, Ao. Seeing Dustless looking at him with a strong desire to fight, the angry crimson mythological beast seemed to be provoked by Dustless. It bared its teeth and roared angrily. The scorching heat wave that it spat out instantly evaporated the surrounding space. So strong. Dustless's pupils shrunk. The heat wave that contained the intention to kill brushed past his body. He had goosebumps all over his body. Since he was born, this was the first time he felt a sense of fear that came from the depths of his soul. This kind of silent oppression belonged to the innate stage. Bam bam bam. In the blink of an eye, the stable ground was like a jumping bed, jumping non-stop. It was extremely frightening. When he looked up, he saw the crimson-red divine beast charging through brambles and thorns. The void along the way was forcefully collapsed by her. How can such a huge creature be so fast? Dustless's eyes widened. He was shocked. Without any hesitation, he held the Sage of Six Paths staff in front of him, blocking the impact that was coming towards him. Even if it was just a casual wave of air, it had the dominance of the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. Looking at the current amount of chakra, Dustless, who had not used chakra, was not even worth mentioning. It was as insignificant as duckweed in the sea. Night Kai. Accompanied by a roar, the crimson ferocious monster shone brightly. Its speed increased by 10 times in an instant. It was almost in front of Dustless at the speed of light. Dustless did not even have time to react. He took the direct attack of Night Kai head-on. Boom boom boom. The ground was filled with smoke and dust. It was as if there was a super earthquake with a magnitude of more than 10. The entire ground shook violently, and a figure was thrown out violently, smashing a few mountains into pieces. On the ground, there was a trench that was a few hundred meters long. It was clearly visible. The remaining energy wave on it was chilling. I'm so sorry, although Night Kai is strong, it has not reached the level where it can kill me. After a while, a scornful voice was heard from the smoke and dust in the sky. Accompanied by a strong wave of chakra, the unbridled dust in the surroundings immediately calmed down and fell to the ground again. The figure that came into sight was thin. The corner of his mouth was raised high, revealing an arrogant and ferocious smile. Chapter 346. In the dark night sky, Dustless stood alone. His eyes were as bright as stars, his upper body was torn into pieces, and his naked body was exposed to the erosion of raindrops. The six-path monk's staff in his hand also disappeared. Within the same level, you are invincible. Wu Chen praised Ba Men Kai softly as his gaze fell on the body of Ba Men Kai, who was already close to the gates of hell. Ba Men Kai's strength was beyond his imagination. If Ba Men Kai was at the same level as him, perhaps he would have already been inhumanely wiped out. You broke the rules. Using the last of his strength to open his eyes, the burnt Ba Men Kai said with a hoarse voice. In his old voice, there was an indescribable joy. Dustless looked at Yakumen Kai with a blank expression and admitted frankly, "To be honest, your strength is really beyond my imagination, so much so that I had to use the ability of the glinting fruit to avoid that fatal attack. Yakumen Kai's power is powerful enough to distort time and space, and no one can be safe if hit by it. You forced me to use the elemental transformation to avoid the attack of Yakumen Kai. You should be proud. Even Uchiha Madara may not be able to do this." Madara's strength is beyond doubt. After becoming the Jinchuriki of the Jubi, his strength has reached an unprecedented level, and it is not an exaggeration to say that he can destroy the world with a snap of his fingers. Even so, Madara did not dare to say that he can suppress Dustless, let alone now forcing Dustless to use the elemental transformation to avoid the attack. What's more, Guy has relied on his own efforts to get to where he is now. Compared with Madara, who uses the Jubi with external forces, Dustless is more willing to recognize Guy. Farewell. Black fire burned from Yakumen Kai's burnt skin, and the dark ghost fire swallowed him in an instant, and in less than a breath he turned into ashes. After standing for a moment in the rain, Dustless left straight away. Dustless-sama is really as strong as ever. About an hour later, the ground where Dustless had been standing before suddenly cracked open. The long yin-yang person poked his head out from the ground and looked at the place where Dustless had disappeared. There was a hint of excitement in his tone. The stronger Dustless is, the higher the possibility of the Jubi being resurrected. Foolish, do you think this man is dead set on walking the same path as us? Seeing that White Zetsu was so optimistic, Black Zetsu had to remind him in a hoarse voice. Uchiha Dustless and we have the same purpose, but our plans are completely different. He and Obito have the same idea, they are both here for the Jubi. At this point, Black Zetsu's voice fell silent. His meaning was self-evident. There was only one 10-tailed beast, and there were only 3 competitors. It was easy to imagine what would happen in the end. In the end, someone was destined to be eliminated. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. I didn't expect him to suddenly rise. Black Zetsu's heart was filled with emotions. He could only sigh at the twists and turns of fate. He had secretly studied Dustless's life several times, but he couldn't find out why he could suddenly rise like a comet. All in all, Obito will kill him after he becomes a Jinchuriki. With a sigh of relief, Black Zetsu no longer entangled with this problem. When the time comes, he doesn't need to say anything. Obito will eliminate Dustless by himself. Of course, if Obito isn't Dustless's opponent, Black doesn't mind helping Obito eliminate Dustless. Time flies and a few days passed in the blink of an eye. It has been nearly half a month since the last battle between Dustless and Yakumen Kai. During this period, the whole world was in turmoil. and a large number of ninja forces were all swarming in the direction of the Rain Village. Obviously, the base of the Akatsuki was the Rain Village. As for why they suddenly knew the hiding place of Dustless and others, it was the most simple. Guy had been away for half a month and there was no news about him. Maybe he had already fallen in the Rain Village's territory. What's more, almost all the countries in the world joined the Ninja Alliance, but the Rain Village was the only one who didn't care about it. Their suspicion was self-evident. As the commander of the Allied forces, Yandame Reikage, the spies sent to the Rain Village were killed several times. Once or twice can barely be a coincidence, but if the number of times is increasing, it proves that there is something wrong with the Rain Village. It reflects that this village is the base of the Akatsuki. When the kage of several major countries knew that the Akatsuki's base was in the Rain Village, they all felt embarrassed. The territory of the Rain Village is connected to the three major countries. If they had realized that something was wrong with the Rain Village, there wouldn't have been this chaos that affected the world. However, there is a saying that it's not too late to fill the brain. The ninja allied forces of the 5 major countries surrounded the Rain Village in groups from all directions. Tens of thousands of ninja allied forces almost filled the entire Rain Village. However, Obito wasn't a vegetarian. He sent a large number of white army to fight, blocking the enemy's footsteps at the edge of the Rain Village. For a time, the entire ninja world was filled with smoke. The Rain Village was safe for the time being. The ninjas of the 5 major countries have all been restrained by the White Zetsu army. Next, we just need to sneak attack their allied forces' headquarters and seize the Nibi to resurrect the Jubi. In a dark room, the masked man said with a gloomy and hoarse voice, and the 2 figures beside him were Dustless and Zetsu. The only difference is that the masked man, Obito, was obviously with Zetsu. Both of them intentionally or unintentionally isolated Dustless. Compared to Dustless who was alone, the 2 were obviously together. This is also something that can't be helped. If Obito and Zetsu practice together, the Jubi will definitely fall on Dustless. Neither Obito nor Zetsu can bear it. In that case, immediately attack the base of the 5 kage. After snatching Yujito, we will directly resurrect the Jubi. Dustless was too lazy to care about the relationship between Zetsu and Obito. Even if the 2 of them were together, it still won't change anything. Chapter 347. With the gathering of tailed beasts, Obito's ambition naturally swelled, especially with the addition of the new blood reincarnated from Kabuto's filthy earth. Obito threw away his last scruples, or it could be said that driven by revenge, he was also impatient, although on the surface he looked calm. In the shinobi world, smoke rose everywhere, a large number of white Zetsu and ninja allied forces were fighting. It was like purgatory on earth, the bloody stench of blood spilled all over the sky, soaking the earth, and the whole world was howling. Ninjas are predators standing at the top of the food chain, and their destructive power is huge. As Uchiha Madara said, ninjas are the source of evil, and chakra is the root of their crimes. The world without chakra is completely peaceful and stable, and human beings can enter normal development. This lineup is strong enough, no wonder Obito can be so calm. On the top of the mountain, Dustless looked down at a large number of ninjas fighting below and couldn't help but nod. The Edo Tensei may not be as strong as the ninja allied forces, but there is a big gap in quality. How long are you going to be a spectator? An indifferent voice came from the side with a little bit of blame. Turning his head, he saw Uchiha Obito with a mask on his face. Dustless watched the battle for a long time, but he never made a move, and Obito's heart was full of resentment. Looking up, a large number of ninja allied forces were fighting below. These white Zetsu were obviously not their opponents and they were almost crushed. Even some of the Edo Tensei ninjas couldn't resist and were sealed. He could clearly see the one-sided situation. The figure of the leader of the political department in front was clearly visible, a handsome boy with red hair, and a clear love character on his forehead. It was Gaara, the 5th Kazekage of the Kazekage village. Get rid of them all, I will catch Nibi. The masked man glanced at Dustless from the corner of his eye, and he flashed away. If he could, he said that if Dustless could kill him on the spot, he would definitely agree. No matter how Dustless reacted, Obito's body began to be swallowed by the vortex and slowly disappeared, as if he had never appeared. What are you trying to be cool for? I was the one who caused your little lover Rin Nohara's death. I'm looking forward to seeing your expression in the future. Curling his lips, after seeing Obito disappear, Dustless couldn't help but whisper. The command in this kid's tone made him extremely disgusted, but considering that his value would soon be squeezed dry, Dustless also felt relieved. There was no need to bother with a character who was about to be swept into the trash heap of history. But you people really should be cleaned up. Dustless stared at the crowd in the distance with a mocking smile on his face. Just as he was about to finish them off, the sand layer under his feet began to tremble. Dust filled the sky, and yellow smoke swept across. The sandstorm that was hundreds of feet high covered the sky and the earth, dyeing the endless void with its own color. It was daunting, as if it was guided by the god of the desert, and it surrounded them from all directions. There was no doubt that only Gaara could use sand on such a large scale. The formation is not bad, it's strong enough, but, with a look of contempt on his face, Dustless sneered, and chakra began to go berserk, like a bottomless black hole. The terrifying fluctuations that erupted directly shook the ground slightly. Dustless sneered, "You're really fragile, you want to touch me with such a low-level technique? Vulgar and ridiculous." The golden evil brilliance spread out, and the high density and rich chakra was compressed into a shape. The thick skeleton was clearly visible, and it was inlaid and assembled layer by layer. In just a few breaths, the tall golden giant was exposed to the air, holding a golden tachi, looking around with its copper-like eyes, and immediately sweeping out the long sword. Boom boom boom. Susanoo was just an ordinary mature form, but its power was still enough to destroy the heaven and earth. A casual blow from it was accompanied by a mess. The powerful sandstorm collapsed in an instant, and the sky was clear again. Gulp. Many ninja coalition forces looked at the chakra giant in horror, and they choked unnaturally. Their faces were full of horror, and the rapid oppressive ferocious eyes could pierce people's souls. Their hearts were filled with fear involuntarily, and they began to retreat involuntarily. "Don't be afraid, he's just alone, and we have a lot of people, and each of us can drown him with a spit. We have nowhere to retreat, and the whole world is behind us." Seeing everyone flinch for a while, Gaara raised his arm and shouted. His voice seemed to be full of magic, and the frightened ninja coalition forces stopped, defeated the fear in their hearts, and resolutely looked at the indifferent Dustless. Everyone's eyes were filled with beast-like madness. Just as Gaara had said, the whole world was behind them. If they cowered, they would be doomed eternally. There was no turning back. There was nowhere to hide. There was nowhere to run. Reckless brat. The means of bewitching people are good. His cold eyes faintly looked at the ninjas below, and Dustless's Susanoo enlarged again. The bright light was more rich and clear, like flowing gold, shining with a burning brilliance. "There is a road to heaven, but you don't take it, and there is no door to hell, but you throw yourself into it. In that case, I will send you to heaven together." With a horrifying frost hanging on his face, Dustless's whole person was gloomy, and Susanoo's katana of light was also raised high. Just as he was about to strike them, a very fast black shadow suddenly entered his sight. The speed was extremely fast, and it was not inferior to Dustless's speed. The overbearing and invincible aura of the whole body was even more daring to compete with the world. At least 4 or 5 chapters a day. Naruto will end soon. Everyone quickly vote for the next world. If there is no actual book review, leave a message for me. Chapter 348. The thin red figure landed beside Wu Chen. His messy hair danced in the wind. His indifferent eyes looked disdainfully at the sky. His hands were casually folded in front of him. The awe-inspiring gaze from his pupils was domineering and peerless. He despised all living things and faintly revealed the momentum to compete with the vast sky. In the whole world there is only one person who is so overbearing, Uchiha Madara. Seeing this, Dustless also removed the Susanoo that covered his body and looked at Madara from the corner of his eyes. His brows slightly wrinkled, and then he relaxed as if nothing happened. Madara in red armor also fell beside Dustless. "It seems that there is a deviation from the plan, Dustless." Uchiha Madara's face had clear cracks, his pupils were gloomy black, and his whole body was lifeless. He was not so much a living person who could walk on his own, but a walking corpse possessed by a ghost without any vitality. Turning his head, Madara's eyes flashed with a cold light. "Plan? If everything is as you expect, what is the point of me and Ibito's existence?" Glancing at Madara calmly, Dustless said calmly. "Others may be afraid of Uchiha Madara, but Dustless is not afraid. Even with the existence of the Edo Tensei, a perfect body, Dustless is not afraid. In any case, Uchiha Madara is a dead man, and Dustless does not need to obey him, let alone fear him." "Yes." Hearing this, Madara just nodded. Indeed, as Dustless said, if things go as smoothly as he thought, Dustless and Ibito really don't need to exist, and maybe the whole world has fallen into the ultimate genjutsu of infinite Tsukuyami. "Damn Kabuto, it was a mistake not to mention killing you." Dustless's eyes were full of murderous intent. He didn't mean to resurrect Uchiha Madara, and he even wanted to kick him away. After all, this guy is very shrewd and his strength is unreliable. Especially at this critical moment, Dustless is extremely disgusted with Madara, who may change the situation at will. Find a chance to kill this guy. Not only Dustless has such an idea, but Madara also has the same idea. Although his face is as usual, he also labeled Dustless as a dead man. It is never wrong to remove the uncertain factors in advance. At present, only Nibi is left. The resurrection of the Geto Mazo requires the nine-tailed beast chakra, and now the Jinchuriki of Nibi has not been obtained, and the resurrection of Jubi has been delayed. Are they here? Raising his eyes leisurely, Wu Chen's sight passed through the layers of space, and 5 strong and magnanimous figures came into his sight. It was like a shot in the arm, and the agitated heart of the joint ninja force calmed down. He stared at Dustless and Madara, and his killing intent was even stronger. Yo. Madara's eyes were full of surprise and he said, "It's incredible from their dress, it's obvious that they don't belong to the same country. These ninjas from all over the world will one day work together to deal with the same person, it's really ruthless." It's no wonder that Madara will have such feelings. After all, he lived in the chaotic period of the Warring States period. Not to mention working together, even brothers would kill each other from time to time. With the change of time, people's inner character will naturally change with it. The current period is not the dark age you lived in. Dustless said, and at the same time he looked straight at Madara and said bluntly, "You just want to see how strong they are." Such a ridiculous excuse, Madara, you're just like a kid who hasn't grown up yet. I just want to see how strong the current Kage is. Hearing this, Madara just smiled indifferently. Frankly, he was really curious about the current strength of the 5 Kage. Dustless, the impatient one, is the kid. What's more, the problem with Obito seems to have not been solved for the time being, and now it's just a golden opportunity. Madara's eyes were filled with awe-inspiring brilliance, and his aura of invincibility made Dustless deeply moved, and he secretly sighed that Madara was worthy of being a peerless hero. Even if several Obito superimposed together, they may not be as strong as Madara. Play as you wish, but don't underestimate the 5 Kage, lest you fall. Dustless simply sat on the ground and he was too lazy to pay attention to Madara. This guy was a typical battle maniac. He just looked at the several figures in front of him indifferently. He actually wanted to see how strong Madara was when he fought with all his strength. "You fell and bruised your head? If it's possible, I hope so too." As his words fell, Madara's mouth was filled with an insolent and ferocious smile. His whole body roared like a cannonball, and with an invincible momentum, he rushed into the ninja allied forces. Boom! The blazing heat burst out, and looking up, Madara saw a wave of fire with a diameter of more than 10 meters. It was overwhelming, and it was like a wave pressing down on the ninja allied forces. Worthy of the name of Senju Hashirama, ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu have all reached the limit. Wu Qin, who was on the mountain top, nodded slightly. His eyes lit up as he praised from the bottom of his heart. Uchiha Madara was perfect, almost impeccable in all aspects. Maybe it's because he's too perfect, so in my eyes he's full of flaws. Dustless's pale lips raised a bloodthirsty smile and he secretly sneered. Perfection itself is a kind of imperfection. He thought that he could observe Madara's power, but suddenly, several chakra fluctuations came from behind him. He suddenly turned back and several old scenes of the past were reflected in his cheeks. Chapter 349. Staring at the familiar faces, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of trance. His thoughts turned back, thinking of the time in the past, and sighed leisurely. "Long time no see, everyone." Dustless's voice was like a breeze, coupled with his slightly soft smile. It gave people a feeling of spring, especially warm. Several figures reflected in Dustless's eyes were clearly visible. All of them were the Edo Tensei army. All of them were wearing crimson robes. All of them were like the previous Uchiha Madara. All of them were lifeless, like dead people coming out of a coffin. "Dustless Uchiha Madara, don't pretend to be a ghost, today I will kill you." A low hiss filled with endless killing intent rang out. Looking up, it was the red-haired youth whose rage level was off the charts. His handsome face was as ferocious as an evil spirit, and the surging hostility caused the surrounding temperature to drop to the freezing point. "Just kill you, why do you hate me so much, Sasori?" Wu Qin shrugged and said helplessly. He lowered his eyes, which were overflowing with cold light. He said indifferently, "You're so restless. I'm afraid that you'll die again before you can see the sunlight and the air. Looking around, he could clearly see Itachi, Deidara, Kakazu, and Haiden, as well as Sasori. What's the use of shrimp soldiers and crab generals? There is also Kabuto, an idiot seeking his own death. Dustless secretly sneered, his eyes suddenly fixed on Itachi's body, and an indescribable color flashed in his eyes. These people were all ordered by Kabuto to clean up. Dustless. Just kill me? Hearing this, even with Sasori's temperament, he was burning with anger. What do you mean just kill me? Humans only have one life. He couldn't hold back his anger and began to erupt rapidly. His young fists were clenched tightly. He fiercely stared at Dustless and said in a cold voice, "The blood debt of the past will be paid with your life." His 5 fingers were tightly stretched, 5 crystal clear blue lines were clearly visible, as hard as steel, cutting iron like mud, and could cut the human body into pieces. Get out of my way. When he was about to cut Dustless into pieces, a thin black figure suddenly blocked in front of him, and there was a clear 8 mark on his face. There was no doubt that it was Itachi. Seeing this, Sasori was stunned, and then he warned, "Don't think that the Uchiha clan's Sharingan is invincible. My art is above your eyes." His gloomy and cold tone was even worse than the bone-chilling cold wind. It was no wonder that Scorpio hated Dustless so. He had nothing to say about dying under the enemy's hands. That was because his own skill was not as good as the enemy's. But to die under the hands of Dustless, one of his own people, he really felt ashamed and sullen. "You are not his opponent." Waving his hand to stop Sasori, who was planning to attack alone, Itachi stared at Dustless, who was standing indifferently, and calmly analyzed. He always believed that there is no invincible ninjutsu in the world, including the Edo Tensei that controlled him, and it can also be full of loopholes. So what? Hearing this, Sasori's aura became even more awe-inspiring as he said, "That guy Kabuto gave us the order to get rid of Uchiha Wu-Chin. Unlimited chakra, a body that won't stop until you die and dash. And what? A body that will never recover?" A ghostly sneer suddenly came, interrupting Sasori's cold face, and then he saw a pitch-black shadow almost instantly appear behind Sasori. Amaterasu. Itachi was the first to react, and his pupils turned into scarlet-red Mangekyo Sharingan, and his sight was focused on Dustless's body. Boom! Dustless's thin body suddenly emitted black flames, and his whole body was swallowed by the flames, and it was too horrible to look at. Even the outline of his body couldn't be seen clearly, and it was beyond recognition. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Sasori quickly pulled away from Dustless. "This guy is too dangerous. He should be dead." Deidara's eyes widened as he stared at Dustless, who was swallowed by the Amaterasu, and his tone was a little surprised. So far he hasn't seen anyone who was swallowed by the Amaterasu and was safe and sound. How is it possible he was actually swallowed? After a while, along with an incredulous voice, Deidara looked up and saw that the black flames burning on Dustless's body were gradually fading away. It was like a super black hole in the depths of the universe, and in an instant, everything was gone. Phew. A sharp sound of breaking the air rang out, and the calm air swept up a strong air wave. Wu Qin, who was reflected in the eyes, disappeared without a trace. His breath trace blended into the void. When he flashed once more, he appeared beside Sasori of the red sand. So fast. The pitch-black shadow covered the sun, and Scorpion felt a chill in his heart. Just as he was about to retreat again, he suddenly felt his body become light. His whole body was free of gravity and he was floating in the air. Looking down, he saw Dustless with a strange smile on his face, holding Sasori's neck with one hand and letting him float in the air. "You people are really sad. It's enough to be killed once. Now you are resurrected and you are going to be killed again." Hearing this, the members of Edo Tensei looked at each other, and they could see the disdain in each other's eyes. When everyone was about to snort, they were shocked to find that Dustless's arm was emitting some kind of strange energy fluctuation. Sasori's body was slowly collapsing. In just a blink of an eye, Sasori, who had threatened to retaliate before, was completely annihilated. Even the powerful body of Edo Tensei couldn't be repaired, and directly disappeared. Chapter 350. Ingyang Release is the nemesis of all ninjutsu in the world. It is the natural enemy of all ninjutsu in the world. Even the Edo Tensei with infinite chakra is no exception. When they come into contact with Ingyang Release, they will turn into ashes. Gulp. It had to be said that the members of Akatsuki organization had witnessed countless bizarre techniques, and had trained a formidable immunity, but facing such a strange situation, They still couldn't help but choke with sobs, and absent-mindedly, their face was filled with disbelief. Sasori was killed by him just like that? Deidara choked and said with a trembling voice. Such a strange situation, he has seen it for the first time in his life. Looking at Dustless, a touch of fear flashed in his eyes, and he subconsciously took a step back. It wasn't until Sasori resurrected that he knew how crazy and terrifying this man was. Even if he was a teammate, killing him was just a matter of a thought from Dustless. As long as Dustless judged that he was no longer useful, even if he was a god, he would also lie under his blade in fear. Even if I die again, I will drag you down with me. The hesitation in his eyes was quickly replaced by cold killing intent. Deidara's face was crazy. He didn't have a good impression of the Uchiha family. The first time he fell in the hands of Dustless, the second time was in the hands of Itachi, and then he died in the hands of Sasuke. It can be said that he and the Uchiha family have an irreconcilable hatred. Pucci, without thinking, he directly used his strongest move. He tore his crimson robe, revealing a big mouth on his chest, and immediately fed a lot of explosive clay. This guy is going to use that jutsu as soon as he came up? The faces of the Akatsuki members who were hit by Edo Tensei changed dramatically. As Deidara's former teammates, they naturally knew some of Deidara's jutsu, and Deidara died because of this jutsu. However, when he remembered that everyone had an immortal body, he quickly felt relieved. He looked at Wu Qin calmly and leisurely. Art is explosion. My ultimate art is self-destruction. Go to hell. Staring at the crazy dead ale, Dustless was calm and composed. The so-called art was of no use to him. From the beginning of this boring duel, he was in an invincible position. Boom, boom, boom. After a burst of dazzling light, an explosion that covered an area of dozens of kilometers resounded through the clouds. Waves of destruction swept out like a hurricane, like the embodiment of the law of destruction. Everything that came into contact with the white light and the air waves produced by the explosion was instantly annihilated. On the ground, a huge crater was clearly visible, as if it had been hit by a meteorite. It was a complete mess. In the sky, the lazy white clouds that had been surging before were also shattered. There was not even a trace of their existence left behind. Everything had returned to its original state. If it weren't for Uchiha Sasuke using Manda to avoid Deidara's self-destruction, he would definitely be in the same situation as the current scene. Even the members of the Akatsuki organization who were reincarnated by the Edo Tensei were also crushed. However, since they had reincarnated by the Edo Tensei, they recovered in the blink of an eye. Was he killed? Deidara, who should have died, also recovered. Seeing that Dustless had disappeared, the corners of his mouth raised into a smile, and his unscrupulous laughter resounded through the clouds. Sorry to disappoint you. After a while, the sarcastic voice that shouldn't have appeared made Deidara's expression immediately collapse, and his face was gloomy. Deidara, you should know that I am immune to physical attacks. For physical attack type ninjas like you, I am your natural enemy. The dazzling light gathered all over the sky and condensed into Dustless's body. He was unscathed and there was a smile on his face. Don't be too complacent, Uchiha Dustless. Flying Duan, who had sharp eyes and quick hands, immediately flashed behind Dustless. The big scythe in his hand went through Dustless's body and directly cut him in half. You are the one who is too complacent. The dazzling golden light gathered on the right side of Flying Duan. Dustless' body began to condense and materialize. At the same time he leaped up. His ordinary feet were filled with indescribable danger. Flying Duan instinctively retreated and hurriedly pulled back its scarlet scythe, wanting to use it to block Dustless' attack. However, the strange scene made everyone's jaws drop. How is this possible? Dustless's ordinary leg without any strength touched the sharp scythe, the latter directly collapsed, and in just a moment, it was completely corroded. Pucci. This scene happened too fast, and in a flash Haydn didn't have time to react, and the leg that swept over his head directly separated his head from his body. His body, like Sasori before, began to slowly peel off and collapse. The name of this jutsu is Inyang Release, the strongest jutsu that can be launched after gathering the power of the Uchiha and Senju clans. Of course, through some other channels Inyang Release can also be used, and its ability is naturally, as you have seen, it can make most of the ninjutsu in the world invalid. Any matter that comes in contact with it will collapse. Looking at Itachi, Deidara, and the last three people, Dustless explained directly. How dare you be so arrogant? Clenching his iron fist, Deidara shouted unhappily. Dustless bluntly told them the ability of Inyang Release, which was a direct slap in their face and contempt for them. Akatsuki is full of S-class rebellious ninjas, and Deidara has always thought that everyone is the same kind of people, and there is no difference in status and strength. Dustless looked at them as if they were ants, and Deidara's heart has long been filled with anger. Actually, killing you is just a matter of a moment. It will end here. Chapter 351. As Dustless's voice fell, Deidara and Kakuzu's expression changed. Their eyes were filled with anger. Dustless's words meant that killing them in seconds was just a matter of seconds. Are you surprised and sad? Dustless smiled at the indignant Deidara and Kakuzu, and the corner of his mouth curled into a mocking arc, and he said, "Don't show such an unhappy face. It sounds like a fantasy, but the actual situation is like this." Puchi. Suddenly, without even a scream, Deidara's chest was directly penetrated by Dustless. The black iron rod penetrated his whole body, and his body slowly collapsed. What a joke. Looking at the black iron rod in his abdomen, Deidara roared unwillingly, and his eyes were filled with madness like a dying beast. When he exhausted all his strength and was about to use self-explosion again, the black iron rod suddenly sent out a more ferocious force and directly annihilated him. From the beginning to the end of the world, it was only a few seconds. This was the strength of Dustless. In such a short time he could easily kill a Kage-level powerhouse after Edo Tensei. The next one is you. He appeared strangely like a ghost and disappeared strangely like a ghost. He came and went without a trace. She realized that when Wu Qin appeared he might have already been separated by the heavens and the earth forever. Just like Deidara before, Kakuzu also faced such a scene. How is it possible? The hair on his body stood up, and Kakuzu's pupils widened. He looked at Dustless in front of him in disbelief. This speed that was beyond common sense was completely incomprehensible, and he couldn't defend against it. He could only passively take a beating. Without the slightest hesitation, silver lightning swept over his body, and crackled continuously, forming a thick silver coat around himself, hoping to defend against Dustless's attack. Boring, this kind of ordinary ninjutsu can't stop me. Shaking his head, the black iron rod in his hand came out. With a poochie sound, it directly penetrated Kakuzu's body after Edo Tensei, leaving an obvious big hole in his abdomen. The ugly black hole was like a black hole in the depths of the universe, and with this as the center, it swallowed Kakuzu's body. In this case only you are left, Itachi. Withdrawing leisurely, he turned a deaf ear to Kaku. Dustless looked at Itachi with interest and asked, "You can be so calm in front of me. What tricks do you have up your sleeve? I'm really looking forward to it, but let me give you a piece of advice. If it's an ordinary physical attack such as a boring and powerless technique like Susanoo, it's best for you to stop now." Dustless could elementalize at will, which also meant that he could ignore more than 99% of physical attacks in the world. Dustless also once said this to Itachi. "Of course I know your ability." Hearing this, Dustless with Duan's words said. "This is interesting." With a flash of surprise in his eyes, Dustless also began to look at his younger brother seriously. Suddenly he remembered that Itachi's Mangekyos disappeared. When he was about to ask if he gave it to Sasuke, an indescribable ancient aura suddenly appeared. Even Dustless and Uchiha Madara, who was teasing the 5 Kages, were stunned and looked at the void in the distance. The strong energy fluctuation almost crushed the whole world, and an unprecedented throbbing could be felt from dozens of kilometers away. This violent chakra. It can't be wrong. In his mind he suddenly recalled the top creature that could destroy heaven and earth. Wu Chen's eyes could not help but be filled with greed and fanaticism. His greed was even more obvious. Daydreaming is not over yet. No matter what your purpose is, you will embark on an alternative path of redemption. Itachi's dark eyes were full of determination, and his voice was heavy, with a faint sense of relief. As long as he uses that technique, everything will be over. Just by you? After so many years, you are still as naive as ever, Itachi. Dustless, who returned to his senses, sneered and said without exaggeration. Even if Itachi's strength in this state soared 10 times, Dustless wouldn't think that he did it himself. When he was about to open his mouth mode to attack this kid, Itachi's voice came in advance. "I don't think you can understand this jutsu. I was going to use it on Sasuke. But now it's your turn." His pupils focused on Dustless's eyes, Itachi's Sharingan quickly turned, and the strange luster pulsed with mysterious fluctuations, and his eyes suddenly began to rage. Staring at Dustless's eyes, he suddenly shouted, "Izanami!" Soon after Itachi's voice fell, Dustless's shining pupils lost their color, like a gem covered with sand, and the original brilliance disappeared in an instant. Dustless's eyes were empty and gray, as if his soul was taken away and he lost the direction of life. The cause and effect of all this is finally over. Seeing Dustless like this, Itachi breathed a sigh of relief, and at the same time the eyes that had just activated Izanami closed and permanently lost their light. Izanami is one of the ultimate genjutsu of the Uchiha family, and it is one of the ultimate genjutsu of the Uchiha family. Once it is used, it will fall into an infinite cycle. This ninjutsu cannot be broken. Only when the victim admits the purpose of the caster, Izanami will be automatically lifted, so the mind of the victim will change. So it can be called an invincible existence, and if you want to break it, you have to know yourself again. Puchi. Just when Itachi thought it was all over, a black iron rod flew toward him and directly penetrated his body, and his body began to collapse. Looking up, the initiator was Dustless with a smile on his face. Chapter 352. His pupils dilated, staring at the black iron stick that penetrated his chest. He subconsciously reached out to touch it, but unexpectedly when he touched it, his entire arm began to fester and disintegrate. How is it possible? Izanami should be unsolvable. Forcibly suppressing his inner uneasiness, Itachi asked in a low voice, and his tone was full of disbelief and confusion. He was sure that Dustless was affected by Izanami's jutsu. However, as if nothing had happened, he used Yin-Yang release to make him collapse and dissipate. Unsolvable? Hearing this, Dustless just glanced at Itachi and said softly, "Any jutsu in the world has its unknown weaknesses, isn't this what you said before? Unsolvable jutsu is called unsolvable, but it doesn't mean it's invincible." Itachi's mouth moved slightly, and his eyes flashed with a touch of emotion. He wanted to refute, but he couldn't refute it. All jutsu have unknown weaknesses, but so far, Izanami has been unsolvable. This is the ultimate forbidden jutsu of the Uchiha clan, and no one is immune to it. Sharingan is known as the Eye of the Soul. When you open Mangekyo, different jutsu will be born in each person's eyes. Of course, there are some incredible things that happen. For example, all three of us have a jutsu called Amaterasu in our eyes. Dustless said, although his tone was friendly, he was very sure. From this, it was not difficult to see that the jutsu born from Mangekyo Sharingan also had a subtle relationship with bloodline inheritance. Dustless still remembered that Uchiha Sasuke also had Amaterasu in his eyes. When he caught Hachibi Killer Bee, he didn't integrate Itachi's eyes, but he could use Amaterasu, which explained everything. Including Uchiha Madara can also use Amaterasu. Could it be that you have a jutsu born in your eyes that can resist Izanami? Itachi himself was a smart person, and after Dustless's slight reminder, his pupils were like waking up from a dream, and a touch of understanding flashed in his eyes. Genjutsu such as Koto Amatsukami and Izanami are invincible and perfect, but the jutsu born in Dustless's eyes seems to be deliberately resisting these jutsu. Staring at Wuchin's left and right eyes, Itachi had thousands of words in his heart. He knew Wuchin's life. Compared with him and Sasuke, Wuchin's childhood was extremely miserable. He suffered from turbulence and saw the world's coldness and warmth. Perhaps it was such a cruel life that caused his life to change, his temperament to change, and his pursuit of life to change. So when he opened Mangekyo, he was born to resist this incredible jutsu. When I activated the kaleidoscope, my right eye gave birth to the omniscient and omnipotent technique. It can ignore and be immune to any illusions in the world that I know. Whether it's the so-called Koto Amatsukami or Izanami, they can't affect me. Dustless is immune to the so-called infinite Tsukuyami. Even if there are thousands of methods, he can deal with them one by one. As the name says, omniscient and omnipotent. He knows everything. Knowing that I'm immune to physical attacks, you can use genjutsu to fight against me much stronger than them. Dustless said indifferently, unfortunately not only physical attacks don't work on me, but genjutsu also don't work on me. From the time I opened Mangekyo Sharingan, no one in this world can cause fatal damage to me. Dustless's voice fell. Itachi's Edo Tensei body has disappeared. You're next. Looking at the distant sky, Dustless's eyes were cold, and at the same time he looked at Madara, who was teasing the 5 Kages, and the cold light in his eyes was deeper and more substantial. Luster rose from his entire body, enveloping the void like the sun. Wuchin hid in the void and disappeared without a trace. From now on, it also means that the cooperation between Dustless and Uchiha Madara is terminated. Whether it is Uchiha Obito, Uchiha Madara or Black Zetsu, from now on they are all enemies of Dustless. Ambitious brat. Turning his head and staring at the disappearing rainbow light behind him, Madara sneered. At the same time, chakra rose again and Kinsusanu's body became bigger. Azure brilliance shrouded the sky, and the ferocious and terrifying Tengu armor was draped over the mature Susanu's head, and a simple and heavy armor appeared all over its body. It had 2 heads and 4 arms, and the 2 long swords at its waist were clearly visible. It's Uchiha Madara's complete body, Kinsusanu. For the 5 Kages, the blue light originally belonged to the light of hope, but at this moment their hearts were desperate. The 100-meter-high giant was a godlike existence for them. The difference between the 2 sides is too big. Even if Uchiha Madara doesn't use the Rinnegan ability, he can just rely on Kinsusanu's complete body to sweep them. Madara-sama. The hoarse and gloomy voice suddenly sounded in their minds, and Madara's invincible attack suddenly stopped, and the sharp sword in Kinsusanu's hand also stopped. Black Zetsu. Samsara's eyes were gloomy, and Madara's tone was a little heavy. There was only one Jubi, but there were 3 competitors and the ninja allied forces were eyeing it. Uchiha Dustless has already passed, and the target should be the 9-tailed beasts? In their minds, Black Zetsu's voice sounded again with a hint of worry. He doesn't think that Obito is the opponent of Dustless, the beast of the deep sea. Dustless with his giant teeth can easily tear Obito apart. 9-tailed beasts. Shouldn't the Jubi be resurrected? The previous energy fluctuation shouldn't be from the 9-tailed beasts. Frowning slightly, Kinsusanu's complete body, Madara's face was full of doubts. The energy fluctuation that spread out just now was obviously not from a tailed beast. This is Uchiha Madara, the tailed beast that the world is afraid of. In his eyes, it's just a small pet that can be pinched at will. Even the Jubi, he doesn't care about it. It's just an existence that he can play with at will. Chapter 353. The energy fluctuation that spread out before was obviously not from the bijou. Madara asked himself that no one knew the bijou better than him. When he controlled the Kyuubi to challenge Hashirama, he had a unique understanding of the strength of the bijou. The strength of the pets is just SOSO, and the energy fluctuation just now is obviously stronger than the Kyuubi. The violent chakra fluctuation before, even Madara felt a palpitation. The strongest bijou is the Kyuubi, but he has fought side by side with the Kyuubi, and he naturally knows the Kyuubi. The energy fluctuation is obviously not from the Kyuubi, and it can even be said that it is completely different. Although the Kyuubi is strong, it is not enough to shake the world. The Nibi's Jinchuriki Yujito has already fallen into the hands of Obito. The Bijudama just now gathered the Yin chakra of the Kyuubi, as well as the other 8 Bijudama. It should also contain the charm of the Jubi. Black Zetsu said in a deep voice, after all, the Bijudama condensed by the power of the 9 Bijudama is equivalent to the Judama of the Jubi to some extent. So that's how it is. Hearing this, Madara's eyes flashed, and he remembered that Dustless's goal was the Jubi, and his mouth suddenly swept with a gloomy smile. It's impossible for Obito to give the Bijudama and the Jubi to Dustless. When the time comes, it will be inevitable for them to fight. Naturally there will be casualties. Dustless and Obito will fight to the end, but whether Obito dies or not, it will be good news for Madara. You go and watch Obito and Dustless to prevent them from making any uncontrollable situation. I will play with these 5 Kage for a while. Although it's a pity that he can't see the scene of Dustless and Obito killing each other, it's good to play with these so-called Kage, at least it won't be boring. Hearing this, Black Zetsu didn't dare to say more, and he withdrew from Madara's mind. After all, the real boss now was Madara, and Black Zetsu was just a will created by Madara. Staring at the dense ninja coalition below, the Kinsusanu gathered on his body shrunk strangely, and he still had 2 heads and 4 arms. What was unusual was that the 2 Kinsusanu and Uchiha Madara were also making strange hand seals, giving people a feeling of danger. Consider this a thank you gift for entertaining me, 5 Kages. As Madara's voice fell, his chakra suddenly surged, and the vast and majestic chakra stirred the world. The dark clouds above the void collapsed as if something from outer space blocked the sky. The earth was dark and gloomy, full of some kind of indescribable despair. Tengai quaking star. After Madara's roar, the clouds instantly burst. Looking up, a giant meteorite with a size of 15 kilometers fell from the sky, almost crushing the entire sky. The huge meteorite filled the void and slowly fell under the incredulous gaze of all the ninja coalition forces. Gulp. Without exception, the ninja coalition forces all widened their eyes, and their faces were full of horror. They unconsciously choked, and some even directly retreated, looking at the huge meteorite in the sky in fear. The visual impact caused by the falling meteorite was unparalleled. Looking at Madara standing indifferently, all the ninja coalition forces classified him as a god. Summoning such a terrible meteorite, only a god can do it. It was also inevitable that Madara was labeled as a god in everyone's heart. Many people simply turned around and ran away. Stupid, the Ting'ai earthquake star covers the ground for several kilometers. With your level, it's useless no matter how you escape. Seeing this, Madara's eyes flashed with ridicule, and then he stood leisurely in Kansusanu's hand, looking down at the ninjas below. His cold voice resounded between heaven and earth. Uchiha Madara is a peerless ninja with the same name as Hashirama Senju. When people talk about Uchiha Madara, they will talk about Hashirama Senju. Similarly, when people talk about Hashirama, they will think of Uchiha Madara. You people are not worthy of being compared to me, including you Kage. Ordinary people are not worthy to fight with me. Madara's face was filled with arrogance, and his majestic voice was accompanied by chakra waves, resounding in every corner between heaven and earth. Although extremely arrogant, no one dared to refute, including Inoki, Tsunade, Reikage, and Mei. These so-called Kage were full of shame. In front of Madara, they were not worth mentioning, they were extremely fragile. This was an undeniable fact. Despair. Flee. Scatter and flee like ants. After saying that, Madara closed his eyes and held his hands in front of him. His long black hair fluttered in the wind, and the falling Mangetsu also locked him inside. However, compared to the ninja coalition, Madara was fearless. Boom! Suddenly, a monstrous explosion was heard in the void. The ear-piercing rumbling sound was like thunder. It seemed as if something had shattered. Raising his head, he saw countless meteorite fragments falling down from the sky. What? Uchiha Madara was slightly startled, and his eyes flashed with a little surprise. He looked at the void and then looked down at the debris under his feet and around him, frowning slightly. He looked up and looked directly at the void hidden in the clouds, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. In a trance, he vaguely saw a golden beam of light shuttling through two meteorites. This should be impossible, right? Madara's calm expression suddenly stiffened, and his face was full of gloominess, and his expression was a little unbelievable, even if he hid it well. Chapter 354. In the sky, large and small fragments were peeling off, and the two giant meteorites were like this, especially the one at the top, which showed signs of collapse. Retreat, prepare to evade. Inoki and the others naturally didn't know what was going on, but seeing the meteorite showing signs of collapse, they cried with joy and quickly ordered the ninja coalition to retreat at full speed and prepare to defend against the meteorite. After all, whether it's Madara or the meteorite, no matter how many people there are, it won't work. It's incredible, I didn't expect that after my death, this pedantic, ignorant and cursed world would give birth to so many unprecedented people. Others may not see what's going on, but Madara's vision was excellent, and with the powerful Rinnegan, he could see everything clearly. Incredible people, I didn't expect that in this world, in addition to Dustless and Hashirama, there are people who can fight with me. Looking straight into the depths of the void, Madara was talking to himself, but the meaning revealed in his tone was obviously the opposite of joy, not the slightest fear. His whole body was as silent as the Dead Sea, without any fluctuations. The chakra was surging again, full of eagerness. There are only two kinds of people in the whole world, the weak are sad and the strong are lonely. Uchiha Madara is the second kind of person. The feeling of being invincible is worse than death for him. Madara is a warlike person. Now that there is a character who can be on par with him, how can he not be excited? Madara could easily see that in the sky above the two meteorites, there was a golden luster that stretched endlessly, without a limit at all. It's coming? His pupils suddenly shrank, Madara's nerves were tense, and his body trembled slightly. Even though he was already dead, his body was sweating. Of course, all of this was due to the fact that he was too happy. Whoosh! The golden light sword suddenly trembled as if it was commanded by God, and a bright brilliance flashed through the air, aiming at the super-large meteorite below, whistling down. Boom boom boom! The intact meteorite exploded and a golden beam of light swept down. It was as if a tiger had entered a flock of sheep. The beam of light was extremely sharp and it cut through all obstacles. In the blink of an eye, the meteorite was split apart, and it poured down without any obstruction. It gave people the feeling that it was cutting through tofu. What a powerful technique. Seeing this, Madara's face was gloomy and his eyes were cold. The golden light was invincible. In the blink of an eye, the top meteorite was split in half. Boom, boom, boom. The scene of the meteorite, which was more than 10 kilometers in size, exploding was also very frightening. The two halves of the meteorite fell from the sky, covering a vast area. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The golden light destroyed the heavens and the earth, annihilating the heavens with a flick of a finger. The boundless void faintly hummed as if begging for mercy. Under that boundless long and narrow beam of light, all living things were insignificant and couldn't withstand a single blow. The momentum of the bright straight rainbow did not diminish, but it flashed more gorgeous and dazzling, and with a more ferocious force, the sword cut through the second meteorite, Pucci. Pucci. The brilliance penetrated deep into the meteorites, but its power was still unstoppable. Everything in its way was instantly turned into ashes. It was so fragile that the two giant meteorites had no way to fight back. This technique, it can be used with my Rinnegan. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is also the power of God. The gloominess on his face disappeared and Madara said. Rinnegan was the eyes of the Sage of Six Paths, and it was a veritable eye of creation and destruction. Of course, Madara no longer regarded himself as a human being, but as a god. Rinnegan was the eye of God. He could open Rinnegan and he was naturally a godlike existence. Even if he was still a mortal body, even if it was the body of the Edo Tensei, Madara thought that he was a human being. But a god, the only god. Boom, boom, boom. In just a few breaths of time, the two meteorites that covered the sky were cut in half, and the meteorite fragments that filled the sky fell down. The golden light also reached its limit, dimmed, and then disappeared into the layers of the void without a trace. In the sky, groups of meteorites roared down, and the number was as dense as a rainstorm. The entire ninja coalition forces was hit by this meteorite rain. Of course, Madara was also in the range of these meteorites. A mere speck of sand wants to taint the body of a god. What nonsense. Madara looked up at the sky, and the corner of his mouth raised a domineering and arrogant smile. The invincible breath of his body was almost tangible, and the pressure made people breathless. Consusano. Chakra suddenly boiled, and a blue giant with a height of 100 meters was formed, wearing a Tengu helmet, a heavy ancient armor, a long sword at the waist, 2 heads and 4 arms. There is no doubt that only Madara's complete body Consusanu was like this. Ring, ring, ring. A steel-like sound suddenly sounded, and suddenly looked up, and saw the long sword in Consusanu's hand was unsheathed, and the long sword was full of sharpness. Weak. Uchiha Madara shook his head disdainfully. His mind moved slightly and Susanoo moved with him. Its huge body didn't move, but when it moved it was like a thunderbolt and the earth trembled and jumped. Madara stared at the meteorites falling from the sky, and the boundless number almost crushed the sky, and the vast day turned into a black night. Boring. After saying that, Susanoo swept the great sword in his hand horizontally, and the awe-inspiring aura energy that could destroy all things directly shot out. Accompanied by a loud roar, the dark sky suddenly turned into daytime. In just one thought, the meteorites all over the sky turned into nothingness. This is the true portrayal of Uchiha Madara, and the fate of all things depends on his will. Chapter 355. Uchiha Madara's strength was beyond doubt. He was on par with Senju Hashirama during his lifetime. After faking his death, he seized Hashirama's cells and finally led to the power of the 6 paths and opened the Rinnegan. For countless years, excluding the Sage of the 6 paths, Uchiha Madara was the only one who opened the Rinnegan. His strength was absolutely invincible. After opening the Rinnegan, even Hashirama wasn't his opponent. Boring, how can I be hit by my own technique? The sky cleared and Madara's eyes were indifferent, and the long sword in his hand returned to the scabbard. It would be ridiculous if Uchiha Madara was hit by his own technique. Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. Along with a shout, a strong chakra fluctuation suddenly appeared from the side, and a tornado swept over like a sharp blade. Bastard. Madara's face suddenly became gloomy. Kinsusanu's huge body was not easy to dodge, and such a hasty sneak attack made him a live target for a while. Pucci. The blade like hurricane scattered, and in the blink of an eye, the huge body of Kinsusanu was swallowed. In a few seconds the Kinsusanu, which was known as the Absolute Defense, collapsed. It was not difficult to see that there was no invincible technique. Madara's Kinsusanu was very powerful, but the Tensigan's dojutsu was also powerful. There was no reason for it to be weaker than the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, especially the hurricane generated by the silver wheel reincarnation explosion, once ran through the moon. Madara's body naturally became the target of these blade storms, and for a time he was also cut to pieces, but because of the Edo Tensei, these physical attacks did not work on him. Sure enough, as Dustless said, his Edo Tensei is equivalent to an invincible existence. The beautiful woman with long silver hair was quite surprised. This Edo Tensei can be called an invincible existence. Chakra is infinite, immortal, and indestructible. No matter what injury it will recover, it is really enough to go against the heavens. Looking closely, it was the only beautiful woman who Dustless had a real husband and wife relationship with him, Otsutsuki Hagoromo. At this moment she has entered the chakra mode of the Tensigen. Her whole body was filled with an emerald color, and her aura was strong. Her form was different from a normal human being's, and it added a little strangeness. But this doesn't work on me. Edo Tensei is invincible to others, but it won't work on me. Her thin lips curled into a charming smile. Her bell-like laughter was like the sound of nature, pleasing to the ears. With a gentle wave of her slender hand, the green prayer beads behind her floated in front of her. With a slight thought, these mysterious pearls turned into a black liquid substance, changing according to Yu Luo's will. A woman? And this seems to have a very familiar feeling. In the sword storm, the devastated Uchiha Madara's face was blue, and his killing intent was rampant. It was the first time he suffered such a loss. His Edo Tensei body was put to death by 1,000 cuts. The speed just now was really too fast, and at the same time, this strange tornado technique was also really too strong. It almost instantly invaded the complete body Susanu's interior, and by the time it reacted, it was already too late. Whoosh. Several consecutive sounds of breaking the air sounded, and the black iron rods came straight at Madara in the storm. These black iron rods were filled with an indescribable danger. Even Uchiha Madara couldn't help but feel an unprecedented danger. Without thinking, Madara also condensed several black iron rods and threw them back. Clang! The roar of steel sounded, and there were flashing sparks in the void, and some twisted iron rods appeared on the ground. This girl. Although I don't know where she came from, it seems that she can use a technique similar to yin-yang release. And what's going on with her strange mode? Ignoring the chakra storm that raged on his body, he saw several black iron rods on the ground twisted out of shape. Madara's pupils narrowed. The technique that can offset yin-yang release means that the technique used by the other party is similar to his in some aspects. In particular, this strange mode made Madara frown, and he instinctively smelled danger. Get out of my way. Endless chakra emerged from the body of the Edo Tensei, and the powerful fluctuations began to spread quietly. The void around him suddenly stirred up invisible ripples, and almost in the blink of an eye, it spread to the horizon. Worthy of being the first man to open Rinnegan, it's really not an ordinary thing strong enough. A weak wave of air brushed past Uchiha Madara's body. She just smiled faintly, and the green beads turned into a black defensive wall to protect Uchiha Madara. Super Shinra Tensei. A huge wave of air broke out of the body and spread out like a waveboard. Everything in contact with it was annihilated, and the raging hurricane was suppressed in an instant. With Uchiha Madara as the center, a few kilometers long pit suddenly appeared on the ground, and the blade storm around him disappeared without a trace. Compared to the original Uzumaki Nagato, he was not at the same level at all. Long time no see, Uchiha Madara, we meet again. I didn't expect you to be so embarrassed, so ugly. Removing the defensive wall condensed by the truth-seeking ball, Uchiha Madara narrowed her eyes, and said with a faint sense of ridicule in her voice. The first time she saw Uchiha Madara, he was an old monster. Although his state was much better than before, the Edo Tensei was still difficult to see. It turned out to be you, the woman called Uchiha Madara brought by Dustless. Hearing this, Madara's face suddenly became gloomy. He naturally smiled at Uchiha Madara's ridicule. He didn't expect the little girl to be so extraordinary. By the way, my surname is Otsutsuki. Chapter 356. Madara's expression stiffened when he heard this. When he was still alive, he secretly guessed the origin of this woman, but he didn't expect it to be so big. The surname Otsutsuki was extraordinary and unique. It could even be said that it was the surname of the god of creation. Otsutsuki. What's your relationship with the six paths Sennin? Madara's face immediately became gloomy. He didn't think that this was just a random coincidence. At the moment, Uchiha Luo's state and her means were similar to Inyang release. Madara couldn't help but imagine that she was a direct descendant of the Otsutsuki family. Of course there is a relationship, Uchiha Luo bluntly admitted, but most of the ancestors of the Otsutsuki family are from the Himura branch, and they don't have much to do with the Six Paths Sannin. The only descendants of the Six Paths Sannin were Senju, Uchiha, and Uzumaki. The Otsutsuki family was the Otsutsuki family, and there was an essential difference between them and the Uchiha and Senju. Traitor who stole the heretic demon statue, today is the day you step into the land of eternal damnation. Uchiha Luo was too lazy to talk nonsense. She had a deep and sneaky hatred for Madara. If he didn't steal the Geto Mazo, the Otsutsuki family wouldn't have been destroyed because of the civil war. The initiator of all this is naturally Uchiha Madara, the culprit. Go to hell. Hearing this, Madara sneered and said disdainfully, "Little girl, I admit that your strength is good and you can fight with me, but in the face of my immortal body, how can you retaliate against me?" Uchiha Luo stood indifferently, and his purple eyes were full of contempt. Inyang release was the natural enemy of the 10,000 things, but Madara didn't think that this little girl could take him down. My task is just to delay time and wait for Dustless to get everything of the Jubi. You should know what your end will be without me telling you. Uchiha Luo looked at Madara with a smile and said very casually. Her task was just to delay and there was no need to fight to the death. Well, I have long guessed that he would tear up the contract of cooperation, but I didn't expect it to be so early. According to my guess, it should be after teaming up to clean up the ninja coalition, then Wuxian will attack me. Uchiha Madara said in a hoarse voice. Samsara's eyes flashed with a cold light. In his view, doing so would only benefit the coalition forces. Harming others without benefiting oneself. You're right. Dustless is indeed a far cry from you. But as the saying goes, the clumsy bird flies first. It's ridiculous that you think he's unprepared. Boom boom boom. As if to verify Yu Luo's thoughts, intense chakra fluctuations suddenly came from the boundless void. They were extremely majestic and contained the vitality of life. This chakra. Is it Hashirama's? Noticing the scattered chakra fluctuations, Madara's face became more ugly. If it was only Hashirama's chakra, he clearly perceived Hashirama's chakra. In addition, there were other strong chakra fluctuations. Dustless did a lot of things in the years I was dead. Taking a deep breath, Madara also calmed down. Dustless was an ambitious person. If he didn't have any trump cards in these years, it would be ridiculous to directly tear up the cooperation agreement and attack him. But even so, Madara couldn't help but feel angry. Dustless's approach was tantamount to indirectly announcing his usefulness. It has always been him who used others to squeeze their value and then abandon them. This time it was him. Yu Luo was just silent with a smile on his face. In fact, it was more than that, including Hinata, Konan, Cheyenne, and Red Lotus, who were regarded as relatives at this moment. They were slaughtering the ninja coalition and the White Zetsu army. Their means were unheard of. The lowest strength of several women was at the Kage level. All of them were wearing the uniform of the Akatsuki organization. Of course, this was the exclusive Akatsuki of Dustless. They were all strong enough to fight 10 or even hundreds of people. The Edo Tensei of the past Hokage and the new Akatsuki organization formed a beautiful scenery. Whether it was the Ninja Coalition or the White Zetsu, they were all killed mercilessly. So what? You think you can deal with me? It didn't matter how many White Zetsu died. Anyway, they were just made casually. They were originally chess pieces. If they could be used, then so be it. If they couldn't be used, then there was not much loss. With a gloomy smile, Uchiha Madara stared at Yu Luo and said hoarsely, "And I think you're a sheep in a tiger's mouth." After saying that, Rinnegan's eyes surged with endless cold light. His line of sight locked onto Yu Luo's body. Ripples surged out from Rinnegan's eyes, and his pupils widened. An extremely dangerous aura drifted out from his body. Wheel grave, border prison. On the other side, a different scene was playing. How did these two get together again? Dustless was speechless. With his excellent vision, he could clearly see the two figures fighting with the nine-tailed beast. One of them was Uchiha Sasuke, and the other one was shining with a bright golden light and covered by Kyuubi's chakra. Naturally, it was Uzumaki Naruto. Dustless hoped that Sasuke could kill Naruto, but he didn't expect these two to play together again. However, after just glancing at Sasuke and Naruto, Dustless was too lazy to explore the relationship between the two. His eyes just swept past them and fell directly on the Geto Mazo under Obito's feet. The ghetto mazo opened its big mouth full of fangs and spat out countless iron chains with a purple luster. On the other side, the 9-tailed beasts were bound. I wanted to make you the Jubi's Jinchuriki, but since that old bastard Uchiha Madara resurrected in advance, this matter ends here. Dustless's eyes suddenly surged with cold light, and his murderous aura exploded. Chapter 357. The chains spat out from the ghetto golem's mouth tightly bound the tailed beasts, binding their necks. The light purple chains seemed to be the natural enemy of the tailed beasts, as they could not be broken by brute force. Even if the 9-tailed beasts instinctively struggled, it was to no avail. Relying on his powerful dynamic capture ability, Dustless clearly saw that the bijou were controlled by the black iron rod. Squinting his eyes, Dustless carefully looked at Obito. Naruto and Sasuke naturally ignored him. These two brats always had some indescribable romantic sparks. Staring at Obito, Dustless's face became cold, and his eyes shot out a cold light. Yasukani no Magatama. With a wave of his hand, countless golden flashes roared out. Today, Dustless's control of the glint fruit and his understanding of all aspects has reached the peak level. Even because he used the glint fruit's ability to the fullest, he showed signs of reaching the next level. This jutsu, the boundless energy tide, was huge, and in the blink of an eye, it swept to Obito's side. Each golden light bullet was extremely extraordinary, and its penetrating power could easily crush a human body. Rinnegan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Obito hugged the sky with both hands, and boundless repulsion broke out from his body. Super Shinra Tensei. Boom boom boom, the tyrannical repulsion spread out, and the golden bullets in the sky were suddenly bounced away. However, a small number of golden bullets broke through the defense of the airwaves, but the effect was minimal. They just hit the ground like a sieve. Under the mask, Obito's eyes shifted and contempt flashed in his eyes. He no longer stared at Naruto and Sasuke. Someone more dangerous than these two has appeared. Using such an inferior jutsu for a sneak attack is really disappointing. The masked man turned his head and said indifferently. His eyes were full of Rinnegan, and he controlled the ghetto mazo and the bijou. He indeed had the capital to despise Dustless. Sneak attack. Hearing this, Dustless's mouth curled into a playful smile, curled his lips and said disdainfully, Obito, you're still stupid. I just said hello to you and you said it was a sneak attack. You've been with me for more than 10 years and you're still as stupid as ever. A cold voice resounded, and Dustless's right eye changed sharply, and the blue eye became clear. Are you kidding me? How can he have that kind of eye? Hidden in the dark, Black Zetsu's pupils dilated. For the first time in 1,000 years, ripples appeared in his heart, splashing with monstrous waves. The expression in his eyes changed rapidly. He subconsciously looked at the moon's direction with a puzzled face. Staring at Obito, who was standing on top of the ghetto mazo's head, Kuroto didn't care about Obito's puzzled look. He raised his hands and sent out a chakra fluctuation. Boom. With a wave of his hand, the air rippled, and Obito, who was standing steadily, was sent flying out of thin air, leaving a trail of blood in the air. Boom. Obito, who was sent flying, smashed a deep hole in the ground. Even the mask on his face was easily broken, revealing his true face. He looked neither fish nor fowl, and there was a clear gap between the skin on both sides of his body. How do you know that I'm Uchiha Obito? Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Obito asked in a hoarse voice, but looking at the tailed beast bound by the ghetto mazo, the doubt in his eyes was quickly replaced by murderous intent. Are you the masked man? Obito's face was pale, and his eyes were replaced by a cold light in an instant. In this way, Dustless's knowledge of his identity can be solved. But it's not a big deal, I'll take this opportunity to deal with you and that person. Brushing the dust off his body, Obito didn't hide his identity. As long as he becomes the Jubi's Jinchuriki, everything will be over. He put his palms together and a black sphere floated in the sky. Chibaku Tensei. The ground exploded with a bang as if it was made of paper, unable to withstand a single blow. Looking around, the mountains were exploding and the earth was sinking. Everything ignored the existence of the law of gravity and was bound by the powerful gravitational force in the sky, swaying and drifting into the sky. Gravity is the word. Everything in the world is affected by the control of gravity. Even light can't escape the shackles of gravity. Obito's voice was as dull as thunder, and his tone was full of confidence. As his voice fell, the gravity of the black sphere in the sky became even greater, and it crazily swallowed the mountain fragments that were rushing towards it. Obito, who thought that he could deal with Dustless, relaxed a little and breathed a sigh of relief. However, the next scene made Obito's face pale, and the corners of his mouth twitched without a trace, and there was some blood in the depths of his eyes, and he couldn't wait to erase the smile on his face forever. Under the gravitational force of Chibaku Tensei, Dustless stood in the same place, looking calm and touching his chin with one hand. Insignificant skill with your half-baked Chibaku Tensei? You want to make a cage to restrain me? Completely ignoring the gravitational force that enveloped his body, Dustless sneered. Obito and he were not in the same dimension, and the launched Chibaku Tensei naturally couldn't imprison him. Don't look down on people too much. People have self-esteem, and now Obito was directly slapped in the face by Dustless, and he couldn't help but be angry. He now has the Rinnegan and can control the nine-tailed beasts, but Dustless again and again as if he didn't exist. How can Obito not be angry? Chapter 358. Dustless raised his eyelids and calmly stared at the falling meteorite. He shook his head slightly, and after giving Obito a hopeless look, he casually closed his eyes and simply ignored the falling meteorite. His thin figure was particularly unbearable under the meteorite. He couldn't even be regarded as an ant. Boring. A cold light flashed in his eyes, Dustless's chakra began to erupt, a golden shadow was reflected on the ground, a looming ferocious armor reflected on the ground, a mighty and extraordinary giant with a long sword in his hand, and an ancient aura suddenly descended. Whoosh boom boom boom, a huge slash whizzed out, the awe-inspiring light penetrated the void, stirring up a huge ripple, and an invisible airwave spread out, annihilating everything and countless meteorite fragments were peeled off. Looking up, there was a sharp crack on the huge round meteorite, the cut was straight and smooth, and it seemed like it could cut everything, dividing the endless meteorite into two. Yasukani no Magatama. Boom boom boom. Thousands of rays of light rose from the ground like a meteor shower. The two huge meteorites were immediately turned into a sieve, and turned into a meteorite rain sprinkled on the ground. Buzz buzz buzz. Just at this time, a muffled sound accompanied by a strong vibration spread out. Looking back leisurely, what entered everyone's eyes was the nine-tailed beasts working together to create an unprecedentedly huge Baijidama. The unprecedented Baijidama could destroy the world. In a trance, Dustless even saw a monster with 10 tails. Baijidama used by nine-tailed beast. Even if it's not as good as the Jubi, its power can't be underestimated. Seeing this, Dustless's body Susanoo dissipated. Such a big body was just a live target. His left eye rippled violently and suddenly changed. With purple as the base, black lines spread out, and 9 mysterious black Magatama hung on the coil. It was Dustless's Rinnegan Sharingan. Casually condensing Baijidama, you don't care about me at all? In this case I won't be polite. The focus of the left eye was the expanding Baijidama, Dustless's body rippled, and the Rinnegan Sharingan was restrained. The 9 mysterious black Magatama also trembled, splashing mysterious ripples. Mahabharata. Boom, boom boom boom. Suddenly, a strange shockwave burst out without any warning, and the range of the shockwave was unprecedentedly large. It swallowed all 9-tailed beasts, and the Baijidama that they had painstakingly spent half a day on was also destroyed by this inexplicable shockwave. The tailed beasts were also easily flung away like ants. They were lying on the ground motionlessly, struggling at death's door. This was under the condition that Dustless deliberately went easy on them. Otherwise the result could be imagined. Fragile. His left eye was the Rinnegan Sharingan and his right eye was the Tensigan. At this moment, Wuchen gave people a feeling that he was particularly depressed and frightened. His whole body was surrounded by a cold aura that was isolated from the world. Even Obito was sweating and the suffocating pressure almost made him collapse. Although I don't know where he got these eyes, the situation doesn't seem good. Black Zetsu, who was watching the battle in the dark, felt his heart tighten. The origin of Dustless's eyes was no longer important at this moment. Instead of worrying about this, it was better to worry about the ownership of the Jubi. Whether Uchiha Madara can get the Jubi or not, this question seems to be a bit uncertain. Not good, he ignored us. From behind, the huge chakra wave rolled over. Looking up, it was Sasuke and Naruto who was covered by the golden flash. The purple light covered the sky and the earth, covering the endless void. Uzumaki Naruto's yang attribute Kyuubi chakra, and Sasuke's Susanoo? This appearance is wrong. Turning around, Dustless smiled, and what he saw was the combination of Kyubi and Kinsusanoo. The long sword in Kyubi's hand was mighty and extraordinary. The majestic and invincible aura spread out, coupled with the body that was stronger than a mountain. If the opponent was anyone else, they would be scared and run away without a fight. An excellent target. Dustless just smiled indifferently, shrugged lazily, and hooked his finger towards Sasuke and Naruto, motioning them to come at him. This casual look was the biggest contempt. Whether it was Sasuke or Naruto, they both frowned, and a touch of anger rose in their hearts. Even if you look down on people, you should stop. Sasuke and Naruto have now merged and transformed, and their strength has a dimensional nature. It was completely different from before, and there was an essential difference. Good opportunity. Seeing that Dustless's attention was attracted by Naruto and Sasuke, Obito's eyes lit up, and he jumped on top of the Geto Mazo's head again. Useless trash, what's the use of having you? Dustless can't even deal with Uchiha. Originally, I wanted to delay the resurrection of Jubi for a while, but since your performance is so unsatisfactory, I can only resurrect Jubi ahead of time. Obito was full of anger. He thought that by gathering the power of Kyubi he could deal with Dustless, but he didn't expect to be killed by Dustless's strange Rinnegan. It was really frustrating. Get in here now. With Obito's violent roar, the Geto Mazo under his feet moved like the wind, opened its big mouth, and directly pulled the nine-tailed beasts over. Gulp. Under everyone's surprised gaze, the Geto Mazo directly swallowed the nine-tailed beasts, and a dazzling brilliance suddenly swept out of its body. The chakra wave that was dozens of times more violent than the nine-tailed beasts erupted from the Geto Mazo. The unprecedented throbbing made even Dustless stunned. Looking back, what caught his eyes was a monster with 10 tails. Chapter 359. Its huge body was boundless, filling the entire human eyeball. Its 10 tails swayed with the wind, and its back was covered with sharp thorn-like spikes. The blood-red eyes were particularly ferocious and terrifying, and circles of black ripples were clearly visible. The only difference was that perhaps it lacked the Kyubi's yang chakra, and it was just a simple 6 tomo. The monster's mouth had saliva like saliva, which was particularly disgusting. Even Dustless couldn't help but feel nauseous. He secretly compared the goddess of Uno with the Jubi in front of him, and his expression couldn't help but stiffen. Especially the saliva that fell from the Jubi's mouth made Dustless feel disgusted. Ouch! The angry roar resounded through the sky, and the roaring sound made even Dustless dizzy. The violent chakra produced a hurricane that made people feel like they were living in the eye of a tornado, and their hearts were full of despair. Not to mention fighting with this exaggerated monster in front of them, they didn't even have the heart to resist. The boundless chakra spread out like a tide, and even the land hundreds of kilometers away from the battle could feel this terrible chakra wave. The Jubi was a combination of chakra, the origin of all things in the world, and the sound it made was naturally not comparable to ordinary tailed beasts. The difference between the Kyubi and the Jubi was only one tail, but in fact, it was a world of difference. Dozens of Kyubi together couldn't cause any damage to the Jubi. After all, the Jubi was immortal. It's over, Obito, who was on the back of the Jubi, said indifferently. His eyes were as quiet as stagnant water, and he looked at Dustless, Sasuke, and Naruto with indifference. The deep and emotionless Samsara eyes could see the three of them dead. At the same time, a conduit sprang out of the Jubi's body, connecting it and Obito's body tightly together. Obito's control of the Jubi seemed to have improved, and the roaring Jubi under his feet also quieted down, quietly swaying its 10 thick tails. It's just the initial form of the Jubi, it gave you so much confidence, Obito? With a thick sneer on his handsome face, Dustless looked at Obito with a smile. As for the Jubi under his feet, Dustless simply ignored it. You don't know what death is. Raising his eyelids, Obito glanced at Dustless with pity and said indifferently, since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. It's no wonder that Obito is so confident. This world is actually a world of chakra. Whoever has more chakra will have a higher chance of winning. The Jubi under his feet is a collection of chakra, the source of everything. Go to hell. After saying that, the Jubi opened its big mouth full of fangs and high-density dark chakra gushed out from its chest cavity, and the condensed sphere grew from small to big, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge Bijudama. What an amazing guy. With an emerald luster, Dustless did not hesitate to enter the chakra mode of the Tensigan. After all, the opponent is the Jubi, not some random cat or dog, so he must treat it with caution. Take your Bijubi and go to hell to repent. Dustless shook his arm gently and several green beads behind him floated in front of him, and in the blink of an eye, they liquefied and turned into a dirty light beam condensed in the palm of his hand. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. Raising his glossy arm, he swept down, and the golden light beam also stretched out without limit, turning into a golden light sword that stretched for more than 10 kilometers, mercilessly slashing towards the Jubi and the Jubi. Although the light beam didn't have a blade, no one dared to underestimate him. Poochie. The golden light whistled down, and the giant black Bijubi was penetrated by the golden light, and some cracks appeared in the middle, but obviously the Jubi's Bijubi was extraordinary, and it didn't explode as expected. But there were many flaws and cracks, and as the Jubi's chakra continued to erupt, in less than a second the previous gap was repaired, and the Jubi's Bijubi continued to grow. Not bad at all. Seeing this, Dustless was not angry but happy. The Jubi was completely different from other tailed beasts, and there was no comparison at all. Whoosh! At the same time, the Bijadama of the 10-tailed beast was also condensed and thrown out with all its strength. The black energy ball rolled over, but Wu Qin just turned into elements with a frivolous expression. The sky was so dark that it was almost crushed by the tailed beast, but the pulsating golden light was particularly clear. Unlike the light of dawn, this golden beam of light symbolized an even greater calamity. Boom! Boom! A huge flame swept across the void, and the blazing impact with high temperature swept every inch of the sky, annihilating everything, and the drifting clouds were also inevitably swallowed. Has he been killed? Seeing the unusually clean sky, Abito's face was full of hope and desire. Dustless was a nightmare for him, and this kind of shadow could never be wiped away, and only by completely killing him would he be able to calm down. Living under the same sky as Dustless was a kind of torture for Abito. The ideal was beautiful, but the reality was extremely cruel. In the endless void, a golden flash swept across and countless light particles gathered from all directions, and the light turned from nothingness to reality, and a thin figure suddenly appeared in the void. As expected of the Jubi? But I am very curious about a question. As the voice fell, Dustless's body disappeared again as if he had never appeared, and only a playful and lazy voice lingered in the sky. Facing such a peerless and unparalleled speed, Abito could only smile bitterly. Even with the existence of the Jubi, his passive situation did not change. Jubi, you are so powerful. Have you ever been kicked by a light beam? You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.